This week on Countdown to Green, presented by Traction, we recap all the twists and turns from Road Atlanta. This week's IMSA wildcard entry is revealed, and we take a lap across the yard of bricks in Speedway, Indiana. All that and more coming up on Countdown to Green.
Hello and welcome to the second ever Countdown to Green powered by Traction GG. My name is John Monroe and just like last time I'm once again joined by Lewis McGlade. How are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm getting on well, John. I mean, again, the first round of the championship, that's really poked my spirits. Absolutely excellent, fantastic round of racing, and just shows how strong the field was. It was crazy good fun. I'm looking forward to the one today.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about all things IMSA Esports, of course previewing the round later on today. We're also going to be catching up with what happened in the first round, and we've got an interview with a new wildcard entrant, so plenty to stay watching for. But of course, today's main event is the Thrustmaster 240 at Indianapolis. We actually have some Thrustmaster stuff here in front of us. We have the new T598 direct axial drive wheelbase, and we also have the new hypercar steering wheel in front of us. But Lewis, that first round, I mean, let us know down in the comments below if you've enjoyed it and what you thought of the whole event. It was crazy from the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely wild. I mean, for one, qualifying was insanely close, especially in the GTPs. I think it was only like a tenth or so separating the top sort of like 6-7 cars, which is always great. But then, yeah, 5 minutes into the race, and we were dealt our first major bit of drama. It was Dura Esports who were spinning coming out of turn 7 right in front of, for one, the entirety of the GTD field. Which
the worst timing possible.
Terrifying.
Right? First lap, I think it was the first time they were getting lapped as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then, like I say, GTPs were coming round. So BMW M Team Redline, they were the first ones to come across it. They got involved in the incident, and then the big one really was the champions. Obviously, the Commander car that got involved in it. Charlie Collins behind the wheel, and that one effectively was done on the spot. The BMW was able to carry on, but the Porsche not so much. It's just a really unfortunate incident.
I mean, essentially, the drivers that qualified at the front were punished for doing so well in qualifying. It's just luck at the end of the day. I thought the Dora Esports car did a good job to try and get out the way before the traffic came, but ultimately, that's what kind of took out the Redline car. It did well to recover to 8th, but such a shame to lose so many contenders so early on.
Yeah, but again, that's race. I think when you're signing up to something so high level, you never want it to end so quickly. But sometimes 5 minutes, that's all you get. Obviously, there was still 2 hours and 35 minutes after that, and we saw some great battling. Some unfortunate stuff, of course. The 170 Team Redline car, the champions of GTD from last season, they were embroiled in a little bit of an incident just with a connection issue, I think, with a CrowdStrike car, and they were unfortunately taken out of the race. And then late on, I mean, boy, did we have some drama. A great battle for the race lead between BS Competition and Williams.
It was, yeah, and it to and fro for the whole event. Obviously, the 5 car was leading up until the last pit stop, and then they had a bit of a slow stop. They were jumped, and then it was the chase from Matt Farr towards the end to try and take back that win. A great move down the inside into the chicane, and it was eventually the Williams car, the number 5, that took the victory. And it was very impressive. It showed, that pit stop strategy was important, but moves could still be made on track.
Yeah, indeed. Strategy was actually really big in the GTDs, especially, the GTPs rather, especially when they were going like slightly long on fuel, and it was all up in the air. Very, very exciting. Love about that. But like I said, got some great on-track battling. Even late on for third position in the GTPs, of course, and the GTDs, to be fair.
Yeah, the battles for third all over the place.
Elvis Rankin taking on Owen Carroll in the GTPs, and unfortunately there was a bit of an incident late on, just an awkward exit from Owen Carroll. Elvis Rankin got into the back of him, and unfortunately it cost the Channel 199 car the podium. But what a fight it was in the GTDs. Rexy being up there, going for some moves, but unfortunately it didn't work out.
Fan favourite Rexy, doing really, really well. They were in P4 for iRacing, looking for a podium down into the chicane, and the move just went wrong. I don't know if it was too late in the brakes or it was just a bit last minute, but ended up the car spinning into the gravel and dropping way outside of the podium. And there was an incident just following that as well. So chaos there at GTD, but Redline, they were able to get the redemption despite the issues for the leading GTP car, and the 171 that had the problem earlier. The 170 car still came through and took the victory.
Other way around, yes. It's fine. It was the 170 was the one that had the problem. But yeah, the 171, which is the one that ended up winning in the end. That was Enzo Benito and Florian Lebigra. I'm sure Redline will be sat there thinking, well, we should have had a 1-2 then. But, again, that's sometimes just how it goes. That's why you have sometimes two cars on the field, so that you can afford that. They still ended up winning. And, of course, great drives from Jody Munoz and Matt Farrow for the Williams car, the Williams Chill Blast car that ended up winning in GTPs again, showing their incredible strength in that category at the moment. We saw this a little bit from Urano last year, where they were really strong in the GTP category. They came into the IMSA Championship and then they were quite strong. Williams very much doing the same thing. They took 3 of the 4 VCO Grand Slams in the GTP category, came into IMSA Esports and once again looking really strong.
They are, and we'll have to see if they can do the same again today at Indianapolis. But we're now going to hear from our latest Michelin wildcard entry. It's going to be the Rafa Racing Esports team who are entering GTP with their Cadillac, and Lewis caught up with Jerne Simoncic.
So I'm joined by Jerne Simoncic, of course, from the Rafa Racing Esports team. And of course, Jerne, you've been a well-experienced man in the world of sim racing, but to these people watching on iRacing, they might not know who you are. Let's introduce yourself. How do we know you?
Well, I'm Jerne from Slovenia. I've been sim racing for, I think, around 15 years already, although it was on a different simulators, mostly on R Factor 2, when I won some bigger events, like Le Mans Virtual Series. Nowadays, you see me streaming more often than not on Le Mans Ultimate, but sometimes on iRacing as well, although I don't really have much experience in iRacing for now, only like 4K iRating for now. The plan is to go a lot higher on that aspect. But yeah, for now, full focus on iRacing and IMSA, and looking forward to the upcoming race.
So, Jenne, obviously you've raced in sim racing for a long time, about 15 years. You've raced for a lot of different teams, Burst Esports, ACR, Zaxspeed, and so many more. How does racing for the Rafa Racing Esports team kind of compare to any of that? What are the differences and what's it like?
The main thing is always to be the fastest on track, so that doesn't change between teams. But the big difference is that in previous teams, it was just esports, just sim racing esports. That was the whole reason of the team being in existence. But with Rafa, it's very different, because the esports team is a small piece in the bigger puzzle of the grand master plan of Rafa. It's not just esports, but it's also real life racing and the big club facilities that are getting developed in the US, and it's all slowly coming together into one big thing.
It's very impressive, of course. Obviously, racing here in the IMSA Esports Global Championship, you obviously trying to qualify. What kind of made you look this way and try to qualify for this championship, and then, of course, get a wildcard entry here?
Of course, I mean, we are still esports team, so we need to do esports. And on my preferred simulators, currently there is not much esports going on. But there is IMSA Global happening on iRacing, so that's the big deal, and we of course wanted to be part of that, so we took the opportunity.
Obviously, they're trying to qualify in the GTDs, but this time as your Michelin wildcard entry, you're racing a GTP. A little bit more in your wheelhouse, at least from where I know both yourself, Jenne, and your teammate, Jesper Pedersen. How do you feel that Michelin wildcard entry is going to kind of help you show what you're about to the iRacing community?
A tricky question as well, because I need to firstly show myself that I'm confident enough and fast enough in iRacing, right? I need to show it myself before I show off to others. But still, actually having some more downforce always helps me in whatever sim. Add downforce and suddenly I'm a little bit faster. So we've been comparing the pace a little bit to whatever we can scratch from the internet or from others for the reference lap times, and it doesn't look to be too bad. We will try to be, of course, the fastest. Always, we race to win, but for the time being, we will need to accept whatever happens and provide from whatever pace we feel like we can. And I hope we surprise ourselves and everybody watching, but only time will tell.
And finally then, one last question before I let you go back to preparing. It's the obvious one. What's your aim for the race? What's the goal that you, Jesper, and the team will come out of the race happy with? Is it a top 10? Is it a top 5? Is it even just finishing?
The $1,000,000 question. We will be happy with winning. We will be happy with podium. I'm afraid to ask the big bosses what they will be happy with. Of course, everyone will be the most happy with P1, but we have to be realistic, right? iRacing has a huge esports or like quality esports player base. Like the amount of people that are fast is insane. It's very difficult to be top 10, especially with 4K iRating. So I will be happy with the top 10 for sure, but we have to accept that even, well, depending on how things go, how qualifying goes, we have to be happy with even maybe top 15. Of course, GTP field is not that big. I think it's like 20 cars, if it's so, and all of them are qualified on merit, and we are invited. So in some aspect, even beating some of the already qualified cars would be somewhat of a success for a first attempt at top level iRacing esports. But I mean, finishing P18 for somebody who is used to winning races in other simulators is still a bit of a bummer. Let's see what happens.
We'll keep our fingers crossed for you, Yone. Good luck this round, and maybe we'll chat to you another time soon.
Thank you so much. Looking forward.
So that was Jurne Simoncic. Do keep an eye out for the Rafa Racing Cadillac in today's event at Indianapolis. They, of course, are the Michelin wildcard entry for this particular round. There will be a different wildcard in each round, splitting between GTD and GTP, but it's nice to see some other teams that didn't quite make the cut originally getting a chance to compete for the victory. And obviously, we saw one of those first time out at Road Atlanta.
Yeah, it was in the GTD category. It was a McLaren, Sherra Esports. They ended up finishing in 9th place, which, to be fair, getting a top 10 in that category is always healthy. And I've said I think this is a great system to have, where we get like a new car every single round and new drivers to kind of compete towards the front.
It's always good to see new faces, and we'll look forward to seeing how Rafa gets on in today's race. But speaking of today's race, Lewis, Indianapolis, it's a track that I would say splits opinions. What do you think of it?
I've never gone well around here, which normally means I hate it. But no, actually, generally speaking, it races quite well. It's actually, especially for traffic flow, I'm thinking this is going to flow really, really nicely. We did race it in 2022 when it was GTDs and then the touring cars. Now we've got GTPs and GTDs, but because of how the split is and how there's more GTDs than GTPs, I think it's actually going to flow really nicely in traffic round here, generally speaking. It's quite an open track, very wide. It's not as tight as like the S's section at Road Atlanta, where you do really have to go single file. Here you've got a lot more opportunities to do so. The main thing though is pit lane is quite long here, so that could play a little bit of factor, again reducing the amount of time in pit lane. If you can shave off a stop, I don't know if that's not really going to happen, but you know what I mean, like that's like the goal for a lot of them, where they're thinking about how to avoid coming down, mostly for penalties or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the pit lane is going to be crucial, and the teams that struggled last time out are really going to need to be careful there, because it's only 4 rounds. They're going to need to get a shift on and score some points. I mean, one great example of that is Redline. We spoke earlier about the issues that they had with 2 of their cars, one GTD and one GTP. They're going to be looking for redemption, surely. Yeah, exactly. And I think in 2022, mostly because we had an argument about it, us in the commentary booth, there was an incident for Redline around here in 2022. I can't remember exactly what happened, but there was definitely some drama for them around this circuit before. Whether that will rear its head again, we'll have to wait and see. They're looking for big redemption here, particularly for that 170 car. Of course, they won with the 171. Channel 199, they're going to be looking to come back into it, maybe grab a podium again. Obviously, they did win the final round of last season. Did Owen Carroll and Casey Cohen. But then for me, like, the big one is the champions. It's Coanda. They need to come out strong here, because it's not their fault, but they were involved in drama last round, and they need to, if they're eyeing up even a top 5 in the championship, this round must go well. It would be good to see a Porsche up there as well, as you say, because we've seen so many BMWs right at the top of GTP, especially in the first round. Do you think we'll see more of the BMWs towards the front? I think there's going to be a bit of a switch around. It's just how the BOP works and how it changes round to round, of course, because it's not the same BOP on a round-to-round basis. That's done behind the scenes with all the teams and stuff and how they work into it. It's a very complicated process that I'm not smart enough. You might be. I'm not smart enough. Questionable. I think you are going to see a difference as the season goes on, and maybe the BMWs aren't going to be too strong around here. We don't know yet. So Indianapolis is, of course, the track that we're going to be racing around. So let's quickly take you for a lap of the circuit. So here we are then on board with Jesper Pedersen for a lap of the Indianapolis road course. We start, of course, on the famous pit straight at Indy, but in the reverse direction as opposed to the oval layout. 298 kilometers an hour as we hit the brakes now, just before the 400 meter board. Down to second gear. Watch out for front lockup when you turn in and clobber that inside curb. You want to stay to the left, use the curb at turn 2 as well, and get back on the power through 3 to prepare for the long right-hander at turn 4. This is all about balance, keeping the car in check and then getting on the power as early as possible. Through the chicane at 5 and 6. Absolutely flat out, but with a lot of traffic, that is going to be an intense place to watch for during the race. Now onto the back straight, up to 285 kilometers an hour and hard on the brakes into the next of our switchbacks. Turn 7, 90-degree left-hander. Watch out for the curb on the inside, and now it's going to be all about carrying that momentum over the curb on the right, over the curb on the left. Watch out for any oversteer. Watch out for carrying too much speed because you want to nail this exit, avoiding the grass, getting on the power as early as possible as we head now through turn 11. This is turns 1 and 2 at Indianapolis, going the right direction. Of course, it marks the final sector of this road course circuit. Again, avoiding the curb on the inside into 12, back to the right-hand side, and then you want to use as much curb as possible through the slow 13, on the power, watching that blue traction control LED on the dashboard as we power through 14 and onto the pit straight to end our lap here at Indy. So there's the look at the stage for today's action. And of course, we've got a 2 hour and 40 minute race coming up, Lewis. The question is, who's going to win?
It's not an easy one. It really isn't. I mean, for me, you look towards the GTB category, focusing on that first. And for me, there's 3 major ones to really focus on, which is between Coanda, obviously their potential redemption arc. You've got Team Redline, because they're a quality team. Yeah. And Williams, and I will lean towards Williams again. It maybe feels like a broken record here, but I think they've got something in this car. They've figured something out, and they just look really, really strong. And Jedi Munoz and Matt Farrow were really strong, to the point where I think even if there wasn't drama ahead of them, I still think they would have definitely been contending for the victory. In the GTDs, though, this is where things get a little bit more interesting, because I can't take my eye off Team Redline, but I will briefly, because I think Grid and Go. I mean, Team PGZ, by the way, getting second place last round was pretty cool for Ward and Woods, but Grid and Go, I do feel good. They're in the same car as Redline in that Ferrari, but I do kind of feel, looking towards them, it was Jarno Cocker Sven Haase that did so well. They got onto the podium after qualifying in third. And they both qualified both cars 3rd and 5th. I think they're the team that I'm keeping an eye on in GTDs at the moment.
Well, do you guys agree with what Lewis has said? Do let us know in the comments during the stream. We want to hear who you think is going to take victory in both classes. But I think that's pretty much it for today's Countdown to Green, powered by Traction GG. Do also make sure you check out the Traction.gg website and YouTube channel for all the latest racing game news. And obviously you can get all of the race reports for this IMSA Esports series. And also keep an eye on iRacing at the moment, because on the 10th of December, the brand new update heading into the new season will include some IMSA content. We will see the new Acura NSX GT3 Evo 2022. So that's very exciting. There's also plenty of other exciting cars and tracks. We've got Thruxton coming, we've got the Ferrari hypercar, so lots and lots of great iRacing content to get excited for. But today, it's all about the Thrustmaster 240 at Indianapolis. We hope you enjoy the race.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head to head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
weeks ago, the IMSA Esports Global Championship launched into action at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, but the trip north has seen us land on the corner of 16th Street and Georgetown at the racing capital of the world. Welcome along to the Thrustmaster 240 as we get set to close the books on 2024. So glad you joined us here on IMSA TV Live on the iRacing Esports Network. My name is Arjuna Kangipati. Glad to be joined once again by Peter Mackay, by Joey Atterbury as we get set to go racing for a battle on the bricks. And Peter, IMSA's been coming here for a couple of years, but this IMSA Esports Global Championship got to do it in 2022. We had the touring cars alongside the GT3s, but I'm so excited to bring the GTPs out to play.
As am I. We had the Battle of the Bricks in IMSA back in the summer, and now it's the turn of our esports drivers after a thrilling encounter at Road Atlanta. A totally different challenge entirely here at Indianapolis, but you can just feel the history in this place.
And it's a really interesting schedule in many ways because it reflects the Michelin Endurance Cup in the real world, Joey, with the exception of switching out Indy for Watkins Glen. Last year we saw a battle in upstate New York, but this is a really fascinating track in terms of the element it brings, the traffic management.
Absolutely. We pretty much take that endurance schedule, like you said, and flip-flop it around a little bit. We did have Road Atlanta just a couple weeks ago, but we've traveled north up to Indianapolis, the road course here for round number 2. Then a couple weeks of a break and we head south to Florida for Sebring. That's going to be race number 3. And then, of course, we're going to close it out at the World Center of Racing, Daytona.
Looking forward to the next round. I'll actually be commentating from Sebring as well. That's going to be plenty cool. But let's talk a bit about BOP, because that's always a hot button topic when you get to a championship with multiple manufacturers. And the team at TFR Lab helping to bring a bit more balance for these particular teams. They set the cars up, they drive the cars in a very particular way. And so you can see a bit of weight adjustments, some fuel adjustments as well, all as they try and get all the manufacturers on the same playing field. Remember, all cars have got 4 entries across of each of the classes. And so, Peter, when we talk about this battle on the bricks that we're going to see here today, it's a relatively flat track, but each of these cars has got to bring its speed across multiple different ways.
That they do, and this is an interesting little circuit, 2.4 miles in length, but very, very fast down into turn 1. That's going to be one of the big danger points. You're braking in a GTP car there from 190 miles an hour, so there's a big braking zone there, but very, very flat as well, completely different to Road Atlanta where we were a few weeks ago. But watch for track limits here. There's lots of places where you can just sneak over the curb and pick up those track limit penalties, and you do not want to end up going down pit road for a penalty.
Penalties here going to be a hot button topic, I am sure. Surviving the start's going to be important as well, but we've already seen qualifying done and dusted, and so let's talk about our AMD Pole Award, Joey.
Yeah, AMD Pole Award winner in that GTP class goes to the number 4 CrowdStrike Racing. They're going to be leading this field to the green flag in that class. And then also over in GTD, we've got the AO Racing by Coanda car. That's the number 118. Y'all might recognize this one. Rexy is going to be leading that GT class to the start to the green flag.
And it was an interesting event for Rexy last time out, with Michael Johnny throwing some moves at the end that unfortunately did not pay out, but he'll have a chance to potentially fight in the closing stage. And a quick look as well, Joey, at how the points have shaken out, with qualifying starting to be factored into this as well.
Yeah, there are qualifying points available for all of these teams to go out there and get in. Currently, it is your round 1 winner that still leads up there. That is the Williams Esports Chill Blast team. But then you've got BMW M Team BS Competition. They're sitting there in 2nd place. Then Coanda Esports. That pretty much rounds out the top 3 right there. Remember, we've only had basically 2 qualifying efforts and 1 race so far. So a lot of these teams are definitely going to be shuffled up. You see Solpec there in P4. And then over to the GT standings. There was that Team 171, Team Redline there that is currently on top by 53 points over Team PGZ. GridandGo.com Esports has actually moved up a couple positions from where they finished back at Road Atlanta, so they're sitting 3rd based off of those qualifying point efforts as well. Solpec Precision Racing in 4th, and Mercedes AMG Williams Esports in 5th.
Looking forward to seeing how things play out today. Haven't actually seen repeat winners, back-to-back winners. Haven't seen a Michelin wildcard entry enter victory lane either. And for today's round, we have a GTP Cadillac V-Series joining the fun. The Rafa Racing team. Been really fun to watch them out there in the real world with the likes of Crim6, Ian Porter competing in a Porsche GT4. Jesper Peterson, Jerne Simoncic, who have got plenty of prototype experience outside of iRacing, get set to show exactly how much speed they can bring to the party. We heard from the drivers, of course, in the pre-show. Lewis McGlade was chatting to Jesper Peterson and Jerne Simoncic. Only 4,000 iRating. Get ready to see exactly how they'll fight, though, here today. We've talked, though, about those AMD Pole Awards. So the thing that's already done and dusted for these drivers is qualifying. Now they get to just look forward, start to turn their attention to the race itself. Let's go trackside. Here from the racing capital of the world, Joey, walk us through the GTPs.
Yeah, starting with those prototypes, it is CrowdStrike Racing, that number 4 on pole position. Williams Esports Chill Blast joined up alongside of them there in second place. BMW M Team BS Competition, the number 89, will roll off third with Fiercely Forward in fourth place. Another Williams Esports, the Racing Prodigy team, the number 33, will roll off in fifth place with BMW M Team Redline starting on row number 3 in sixth. On 7th is Solpec Precision Racing. 8th will be Channel 199 Sim Racing. I think they're looking for a little bit of redemption after how last race ended for them. Apex Racing will start in 9th place right there. 10th will be Race Clutch. CrowdStrike Racing, their second car, the number 3, will start from 11th. And 12th will be the other Race Clutch car, the number 15. And 13th will be the Simify Esports car with Rafa Racing. That's the esports team, the number 82, starting 14th. GridandGo.com Esports, the number 6 car, starting 15th, with Coanda Esports starting 16th, and then the final of the 17 GTP cars will be another Coanda car, the number 18.
And that is a stacked field, but small in numbers of the GTPs compared to the GTDs that they'll fight through. Rexy will roar from the front, trying to scream its way into victory lane. Now, what can they do with a 123.156, a full tenth quicker than the 56 Racing team, and the first of the Chevrolets that will fight alongside on the front row. Then Team Redline, race winners 2 weeks ago. They've got the Grid and Go Ferrari for company on row number 2, with Valkyrie in that Ford Mustang alongside of the Mercedes AMG team, Apex Racing team. Mercedes looking strong in qualifying. What can they do now to charge forward in the race? Sontec Racing, Overpower, and Lasse Urinen inside of Isaac Price for the G2 Esports Ford Mustang. Team PGZ, who, let's not forget, second place a couple of weeks ago. What can they do with some momentum while trying to bounce back? Team Redline's 170. Disappointment for them after being crashed out from the lead. Now looking to try and fight from the edge of the top 10. World Sim Racing Esports alongside of the Drago Lamborghini 11th and 12th positions. Some work for them to do in the Huracan Evos. BS Plus Turner's 196s alongside the second World Sim Racing Lamborghinis, with Door Esports' 121 Alexander Thieber 15th, and the GridandGo.com Ferrari of Sven Haase, who fought towards the front in our AMD 240, having to fight from further back in the mid-pack. Drago Racing second car is alongside of Door Esports' second car as well. And then the rest of the top 20, the second Mercedes for the Apex Racing team, and the Mercedes AMG Williams Esports crew. Marla Racing, Maniti Racing, bookending the drivers, just missing out on being about 1 second off of the pace, and scrolling through the rest of the names, some big teams and drivers with some work to do. The likes of Channel 199 Sim Racing, Elias Riker's going to start that car alongside of the Oscar Bixrud, Solpec Precision Racing as well in their Porsche. And then as you get ready to rumble down through the tail end of the order, just 2 more cars in the 32 strong GTD field. Sontec and 07 Racing at the very back. A lot of teams and stories to work through, but Peter, talk us through today's Michelin keys to the race.
One of the things really to look out for, as you mentioned before, is the track limits. It's really easy to just step over the edge here and accumulate track limit infringements, and if you reach a certain level, you will be sent to pit lane for a drive-through penalty, and it is hugely punishing here because it's such a long pit lane and quite a slow one at that as well. And for that same measure, stay out of the pits. At this level, if you have to take an extra pit stop to everybody else, you are going to be absolutely nowhere, particularly in GTD with a field of 32 cars. And one from our team racing driver survived the chicane. I wonder if that's from personal experience for our very own Joey Atterbury, if he's had an incident at that chicane. Which chicane are we talking about? Well, that's the one into turn 1 and 2. It's really easy to get into a little bit of a disagreement, so watch out for that.
Joey, personal experience?
I don't think I've banged any doors going through the chicane over there, but it's such a massive funnel area. Everybody's so eager to get going, and it's not only a funnel going in, but it's also got those huge bumps on those cold tires. So I just think it's a major danger area. Once things get in the rhythm, then you can be a little bit more aggressive.
Well, I've got to say, we had the Indy 6-hour special event as part of the iRacing special event calendar a couple of months ago. That had plenty of chaos through the chicane. That also had its threat of rain, something that we don't have throughout the course of today. What we are going to see, though, Peter, is a descent of the sun. And the one thing that, at least at Indy, I truly believe, is the sightlines get mixed around and the track transforms as you run into the night.
Well, that's going to see differences as well in how the tyre behaves, because as the track temperature cools down, that can potentially make the tyre last longer, give you more grip, etc. So let's see how that one plays out. And this is a circuit where, yes, we've competed in this championship on this track before, but it's not a circuit that that these drivers will be on very, very often. So the teams that have put the most preparation in will really, really benefit here, especially when it gets to the darkness hours.
Yeah, keep an eye on Christian Hilgard, who's going to start the fiercely forward number 11 from 4th position. He says in the last couple of months he's got more than 24 hours worth of laps at this car, with this car and track combo. So there are some drivers who will bring that expertise. There are some that will bring a little bit more inexperience. Time to throw both my fellow commentators on the spot. This time I'll start with Joey in the GTP, who comes out on top from the field of 17.
You know, I'm going to throw the Channel 199 Sim Racing guys a bone here. I think they've got a little bit of redemption after how Road Atlanta ended. Then I'm also looking at the Team Redline, the number 170 car. They had a lot of problems in round 1.
And what about you, Peter? Who's standing out to you?
I'm going to go for the Zebras. Car 89, BMW, Team M. They are going to, I think they're going to come through and win this one.
Well, here we go. Pace cars off and away, and so 2 hours, 40 minutes thrown onto the clock. Ready to rumble for the Thrustmaster 240. The last vestiges of on-track action in 2024 for many of these drivers. It's CrowdStrike Racing, Pablo Lazar, that's in control of the field, rumbling up towards the start zone. There's 16 hungry GTPs behind him ready to go. And don't forget, 32 GTDs ready to rumble as well. It's a long hold from the Acura. He might be at a disadvantage down to turn 1 as he punches the throttle, and we're racing from the Brickyard. They're 3 wide behind, but single file for a couple of moments between the top 2. 3 wide as they stab onto the brakes. Fiercely forward, try to go aggressive, but now defensive from Williams Esports Racing prodigy. Rexy roars onto the throttle as well, and look at the start for the GTDs. Both pole sitters able to control, Peter, exactly what they wanted to see.
And the way that Acura just pulled away from that rolling start is ominous for the rest of the field as the GTDs come through, all just a little bit of bumping and barging, a little bit of contact there between the virtual coach black and yellow Ferrari and one of the Corvettes, and that is really, really tight through there, but the leaders get through. But tell you what, that Acura up front, that CrowdStrike Acura has got some serious straight line pace.
We were thinking it might actually be a slight disadvantage initially going through the gears, but the jump it got, Pablo Lazar is already almost 1 second clear onto Holman Boulevard. The GTDs 3 wide behind without a shadow of a doubt, and BS Turner, that split liveried Zebra, almost slid it around under the brakes. Team Redline second Ferrari holds on in front of the Ford Mustang, the 131 Sontec overpower machine. But now as they get to the end of the S's, to this section that was added about 7 or so years ago, onto the brakes into the chicane, Joey, breakaways from our leaders. The rest of the field forced to fight over the scraps.
Yeah, look at the number 114 Porsche slide their way down to the inside, but it puts them on the wrong side of the road here around this very, very tight left-hander. We're going to be seeing give and take be played all day long through there, especially with the prototypes versus the GTs. We got to remember, these prototype cars, they're really, really fast through the medium speed stuff, but there's plenty of slow speed stuff that the GTs are just as quick.
one lap complete, and I only see one team having some sort of an issue outside of the opening corner. Door Esports in the 121, Mag Performance, Sontec Racing as well in the GTDs. A couple of slow cars, but everyone else still pointed in the right direction. BMW M Team Redline pole sitters a couple of weeks ago, let's not forget, before the first time through traffic, no fault of their own, ran into trouble, and nowhere else they could go from them. Let's spin back in time though, Peter, figure out what's already happened in the first 2 and a bit minutes of this race.
So let's get a peek then of what's going on. It's all just so tight here, and one of the Grid and Go Porsches having a look in, and then that's not how you behave as a guest. Rafa Racing they're our guest for the day, and they're already making themselves unpopular with the series regular. With the 14 car, they're getting turned.
Well, I guess, that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it, Joey, is they're only here for the one race, so they don't need to make friends, because they won't have any enemies for the rest of the season either.
You don't want to upset the apple cart, though. It's one thing to do as a regular. It's one thing to come in basically as a guest and then kind of get to it. I think this is going to be a really cool shot. You were talking about some of those different additions to the Indianapolis road course. I think that kind of the S section back here, the constant back and forth, it may seem tedious and technical, but it is actually quite fun and has a nice rhythm to it after kind of the, what do you want to call it, a slight recontour?
I think the one thing that I appreciate is, as much as the chicane has got pros and cons, it's better than the double hairpins that we used to have when Formula One first came here back in the day. I still remember driving around that and feeling the cars are so lethargic around there because it needs to have no downforce to go down these straights. And so that compromise actually made for some interesting setup choices, but rather boring to drive. We're going to see traffic sooner rather than later, maybe not this lap, but the next time by. And I've already noticed that there is a bit of a gap starting to build between some of the GTPs. Not really much of a buffer yet through the GTDs. And Peter, one thing we talked about last time out was the fact that for the first time, there are much more numbers for the GTDs, 32 of them compared to just 17 for the GTPs.
And that's going to be really, really tricky for the GTPs, I think, particularly trying to get through, because as Joey rightly mentioned, there's points of this circuit where it's very low speed, and the GT cars are almost as quick or as quick in certain corners as the prototypes are. So if you're in a prototype, you might find when you're coming into a section where you've got an opportunity to make a 50-50 move, you might have to go for it to try and get a move done so that you don't get stuck in the train going through the more technical parts. So watch out for that, how the GTPs might have to be more aggressive in certain places to get a move done and not lose time.
I think one thing that I'm going to be quite curious to see how it plays out is race control. It was mentioned in our Michelin keys to the race, how involved are they going to be? How many people are going to get drive-through penalties? Here's a look at our Michelin wildcard. One team already under investigation by race control. But Joey, it's something that you've already caught. There's a penalty that's come down for a start violation, about as black and white a violation as you could get. And to the Grid and Go 102 that a couple of weeks ago was fighting at the front with Team Redline for the victory at Road Atlanta, well, it's got a drive-through penalty to serve in the next couple of laps.
Yeah, that is this number 102 Ferrari, like you were just mentioning. They were on the podium just a couple weeks ago, but starting off on the wrong foot, and I think that was one of the keys to the race out here. Stay out of pit lane. If you have a penalty, you're going to have to go serve it through this incredibly long, incredibly slow pit lane. We'll see if the 102 peels off this time by, or if they're going to continue on. Looks like they're going to go do one more lap around this before they finally really get called into pit lane, but that's going to force them all the way to the back.
Interesting choice. I would have thought maybe not a bad idea to come in this lap, knowing that I do think the traffic, based on my track map, we're going to get the overlap this time by. Mag Performance is slow, and their sister car is going to now overlap, a little bit close for comfort, but through that final corner, haven't even seen the traffic come. There's the race leader. Pablo Lazar is going to fly his way on through, and so now we've got those fights, both within GTP and GTD, overlapping for the very first time, Peter.
Oh, and nearly a little bit of friendly fire there between those two Mag Performance cars, between the Corvette and the McLaren 720, just nearly getting together, coming through that pinch point of turn 1 and 2 as the two BMW prototypes desperately try to make their way through. Oh, aggressive there There's the BS competition car, the 89 of Daniel Alves-Lorenko, he gets through, but the 33 of Alexander Spets, well, that was very, very tight there for the Williams Esports driver. Had to really take that risk to get through.
And you're going to see more risk the first time by, just because it tends to stretch gaps out when the field is much more closely compact. And you saw Daniel Lorenzo able to slide through, and actually Alexander Spets was able to get off the corner quite well, spool the hybrid up, and that's where knowing how to use the extra power that you've got is going to be very, very important. Now, patience from the Williams Esports Racing Prodigy entry before it chinks back to the inside. But as a slower class driver, Joey, there is no more scary feeling than this first pass of traffic.
The first time through is definitely extremely nerve-wracking. I'm even wincing over here at a couple of these moves, but it looks like the GT cars are plenty aware of what's coming up in the mirrors. They know that the entire prototype field is coming. It looks like we're going to get a replay here of the number 150 car. I believe this was the McLaren, and this is going to be coming out onto the front straightaway, I believe. This is that third sector here, going to be coming up, jumping hard on the brakes. You see the BMW to the outside, the Lamborghini, and they're just kind of boxing in this McLaren right here. Good racing, forces the BMW a little bit wide. Wonder if there's going to be a little bit of a door bump right here. Still extremely respectful. Cold tires can play a factor, but there was the contact. Front right on the BMW to the left rear on the McLaren, sends it around.
And eventually, Andre Bristow had to take a tow back to the pit lane. I don't think that was the end of the drama for him. And there you can see how close it was to the traffic actually being a part of that as well. So GTDs getting tangled up before the prototypes even had a chance to impose themselves on the race. Now remember, 56 Racing, Gal Valero in that Chevrolet started on the outside of the front row, but Rexy got such a good launch that the 156 has been dropped back to 5th position. Team Redline, the 171 race winners from the AMD 240, they sit in 2nd with Grid and Go, the 103 in 3rd, and then Valkyrie, the Ford Mustang that we ride on board with right now, and seeing some of the last bits of traffic starting to work its way on through. This is the car that rides right now in 4th position, and let's not forget what happened at the end of the race to this car last time. Through the final corner, a little bit aggressive, and this time they won't even get to the end of the race, Peter, as around they go, and more contacts as the Mustang stricken.
The WSR Esports butt kicker Lamborghini involved in that one too. Oh, just as we were talking about it, Valkyrie, not a great deal they could do. It just gets rear-ended by one of the BMW prototypes. I think it was the BS competition car, which surely must have some damage as well, because it was a pretty big thump to the back of that big Ford Mustang for Valkyrie competition. They just cannot catch a break in this 2024 season.
Well, the break in the last race was maybe self-inflicted, to be fair, with Lexi Nessov being a tad aggressive down through the final corner. This one, like you say, have to take a look at the replay, but seems as though they were kind of just boxed in there for the Porsche Grid and Go, the prototype that pushes the Ferrari out wide. And the first pass through is always the most scary for your leader, either side of the traffic, as they now battle onto the main straightaway. Diogo Pinto in the BMW M Team Redline car feels the pressure from Agustin Canapino, who's done his fair share of racing here in the real world. He lets off the throttle though. I wonder if he's going to let the Channel 199 sim racing car by, either for a slowdown penalty, and maybe something else has happened, but something clearly went on into turn number 1, and Race Clutch sits behind Joey and goes, my oh my, where can I place myself?
I think that Canapino was just lifting off the throttle to kind of save some fuel. He wasn't expecting the competitors behind him to go lunging up the outside, but that's exactly what Owen Carroll did. And now Sean Campbell's going to force the issue. He's going to try to pick off both of them. He's going to at least pick off the 199 car, so move him up into 8th place for Race Clutch Black.
Ooh, and Sean Campbell, a bit of a wiggle there, but he was a bit of a star when we were here in 2022's racing with the Hardpoint by Delta Sport Porsche GTD back in the day, now in the GTP. But he's got a car with Owen Carroll starting it that should have been on the podium in their mind at Road Atlanta. They're a little bit further back in the field to start this race off, but I think that was intelligent driving. And Peter, this is what makes these races so interesting, right? You need to have both your drivers do a minimum amount of time. Casey Kerwin started the Cadillac for Channel 199 last time out. They put Owen Carroll in to start this time by.
That's interesting, isn't it? So maybe there's there's differences in how they perform, whether it be at Road Atlanta or here at the Indy Road Course, and they are just such different racetracks. So I could see with that how they'd maybe have one driver who's a little bit more comfortable with this circuit than others. Let's get a look then at what happened to the Valkyrie competition cars. Got the Corvette right in behind, and should see some prototypes come onto the scene in quick succession very shortly. But that Valkyrie competition car just going along, minding their own business, no problem at all. And the prototypes are going to arrive on the scene sometime soon. There you can see the lead of the CrowdStrike car, which makes its way through more than cleanly enough.
These are those split seconds, right, where decisions are made, and there's no way to really get practice other than being in these situations, and so it's a catch-22, right? You just need to do more races to get more comfortable with it. Lunge up the inside there. The Grid and Go car actually gets a bit of a tag from the Valkyrie machine. BS Competition is there as well. And, well, tries to get out of the way. It's Channel 199 that actually makes some contact. And so now you've got to wonder, is Owen Carroll going to be suffering a little bit? What we can say is race control's plenty busy already to start this race off. Joey, the Rafa Racing team, the Rafa Esports 82, I think that's a pretty easy penalty, wasn't it?
Yeah, they kind of got their elbows out very, very early on, and I believe they have served this one already, but like you said, race control quite busy. I think they were quite busy at Road Atlanta too. I think that here at Indianapolis, there's less room to run. You know, you can't just kind of move your car off of the racetrack or off of the racing line. You're pretty much always stuck smack in the way.
And, well, you say race control busy. I think they're going to be even more busy. I've just seen on pit lane, Team Redline 170. Remember, they led for the vast majority of the opening stages of the race a couple of weeks ago before being involved in some contact with a GTP car. Seems as though deja vu, involved in contact again. Sam Coiter has brought that car back down to pit lane, and so defending champions, that's 2 for 2 to be involved with traffic, Peter. That's sometimes, though, the way that this sort of racing goes.
It is. It can sometimes be in your control, and otherwise it can't be. So yeah, we've seen a few instances of that already. I mean, that Valkyrie competition incident there was interesting because he actually got into the car in front. That checked him up, which then caught the BS competition car off guard. I mean, I guess the BS competition where they were on the back foot anyway when I picked them for the race win.
Predictions are always a dangerous thing for commentators, especially if you believe in the commentator's curse, which I know Lewis McLeod is watching somewhere and going, there is no commentator's curse, and I've just set him off on an absolute rant. Fight for 16th, Solpec Precision Racing have had a pretty quietly impressive day so far. Cars looking pretty clean, 9 positions up. I mentioned Channel 199 Sim Racing on the grid, and Elias Reich are going to be one to watch. They're up 11 places so far. And qualifying points might be important in some regards, but Joey, the way the championship points are structured, much like in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, the higher up you are in the race, the better the points that you get.
That's just kind of the natural way racing works, but this is kind of our biggest group of movers, like you said, +9, +11. I even see +7 out of that Mercedes-AMG Esports Team Williams car just up the road as well. And we're just now settling into the rhythm, so that tells me probably either very aggressive off of the start, good racecraft from the driver, right? You can't just make up all those positions. If you're not good at racecraft, you're going to be going barreling into other competitors and pick up damage on the car. So you've kept it clean, you've moved it forward, and now it's time to go ahead with the game plan.
So we're only 15 minutes into this craziness, and like I mentioned at the start, for many of these drivers, their last bit of on-track serious activity for 2024. But if you're thinking this looks good, you want to join the fun maybe for the next season, well, iRacing.com/holiday-sale. New memberships are 50% off through January the 25th, so there is a great opportunity for you to start your iRacing career today. And with plenty of the sports cars up for grabs, we have 12 different cars in this series to be joined by the Acura GT3 coming to iRacing next week. Not coming to the series, just to be clear. So much content for you to dive into, building up to the start of the 2025 iRacing special events as we swing back around to Daytona. Valkyrie, the 177, drive-through penalty for them. Bit of a moot point, though, given the damage they'd already had on their car, Peter.
rubbing salt into the wound, isn't it? You're sitting there getting all that repair done, then the word comes through on the radio, yeah, when you get back going, you've got to come back down and see us again in pit lane. It's a sore one. Into the pits then, also for a drive-through penalty, is the number 3 CrowdStrike Racing Acura. That's not the race-leading car. The race-leading car still in a good spot, although that gap is coming down a little bit. Williams Esports Chill Blast in second place, just snipping that gap down to nearly draft range. So is the Acura strong in those early laps, and then does the pace start to fade away? Do the BMWs come on strong as the fuel load comes down? We'll need to keep a close watch on that.
It's very difficult, right, sometimes to look at BOP, because I look at the 4 teams in the BMW. You've got 2 Williams Esports entries, 1 BS Competition entry, and a Team Redline entry. Williams Esports have won 3 of the 4 VCO Grand Slams in the GTP category in this year alone. Redline and BS Competition, you know, they're very strong teams as well. So the fact that we've got 4 of the BMWs up in contention, does that mean that they're just maximizing it? Or is there something with that BOP? Down onto pit lane, by the way, another drive-through penalty. Plenty of car contact to race control, deeming that the 172, Elias Riker, a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too early. Do have to think, though, Williams Esports sitting second and third right now. Joey, they're in a great position as one car shortcuts the chicane.
They are in a good position, and they're both in those BMW prototypes like you were saying. And to kind of speak on maybe the BOP a little bit more, sometimes drivers drive better at certain tracks, and sometimes the car might drive better at certain tracks. So when you're in the responsibility of dictating that BOP, you have to take in all of those factors, and some of them are in some gray areas that aren't necessarily black and white to really say, okay, the car's 5 miles an hour faster on the top speed here, so we just need to bring it back on horsepower. There's lots of different things going on, lots of variables, but the BOP pretty close, if I must say so.
Well, traffic's going to be 3 wide as we ride on board with the number 8 Coanda Esports car. Mitchell de Jong had to start from the back of the field because of a late election of substitute drivers. And, well, after the Porsche Night of Champions last night, no signs of at least showing some wear so far today as they've slowly and quietly been slicing their way through the field, quite efficiently dispatching of the traffic. Starting this far back early in this race, though, does mean one thing. They'll probably be thinking fuel mileage and strategy. They've used that to great effect in this series on a number of occasions. So keep an eye for the 8, keep an eye for the 18 as well, with Charlie Collins behind the wheel. As through the traffic they go once again. Around the outside, track limits. Something should be said, right?
Yes, they're using a liberal amount of the racetrack there. I mean, it's a big facility at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 2.5 miles for the oval, 2.4 for this infield road course, and what puts it right up there as one of the greatest racing facilities in the world, it's got a golf course in the middle of it. But I think if that were a golf course, I think Mitchell de Jong would be all 4 wheels in at least the semi-rough there.
Well, I mean, he's quite used to being off into the dirty stuff, of course, as a rallycross competitor. Let's not forget. So, maybe his ability to get up and go is not bad. One thing, though, that I'm just noticing is that very patient, and that's what you want to see in this sort of a situation, right? Joey, when you've been put on the back foot, often no fault of your own with a sort of penalty like that, right? Very easy to drive too aggressive, to be trying to charge his way through the field. Mitchell's still only 12 seconds off for the lead 20 minutes into this race, so there's still every chance of a good top 5 finish here if things go according to the schedule.
And each driver should know their responsibility, right? As a starting driver, you know that you've got to hand over a car to your teammate, hopefully in good condition, and if you can move it forward, that's what you want out here. And so, yeah, you do kind of have to manage this aggression. You see all the GT cars, and basically, which gap do you go in? How aggressive can you go in the brake zone without upsetting your competitor? Be able to slide into a nice open gap. Once again, not upset anybody, but then still move forward and not lose time to the competitors that are being overly aggressive sometimes.
And one thing I don't think drivers do enough is drive the other class. You have the benefit of being able to do it in the sim racing world. You can't do it in the real world, right? Unless you're Ben Keating, in which case you're living every person's dream at the end of the day. But the GTDs and the GTPs, they get through the corners so differently. Like, look at this, the Mercedes is going to track out wide, and so Kawanda actually quite lucky there. The 198 lifts off the throttle and gives them room around the outside. There was no lifting though, because a fight brewing. The Acura for the Apex Racing team, the long way around into turn 1, you're braking at almost 300 kilometers an hour, and with some energy recovery as well, single file for the time being. We'll point out, race lead, 3 cars now separated by 1.5 seconds, Peter. Traffic has closed it up.
It has. It's like an accordion, in and out and in and out all the time. And you have to say that our race leader in that number 4 CrowdStrike Racing Acura, Pablo Lazar, is doing a superb job in this opening part of the race. 23 minutes in, and he's not flinched, and it's really difficult through traffic. There's some real pinch points where the prototypes have got to go the long way around and try and find space, and you don't really know sometimes if the GT car is going to give you room, and then flip that around. If you're in the GT car, it must just be just anxiety all the time with just a swarm of prototypes around you, like a swarm of wasps at a barbecue, and you can't swat them all at once.
Well, if you're Rexy, you might be able to. There has been a lead change in GTD. Redline 171 on top. Let's ride on board. Listen in to the sounds of this Porsche 963 presented by Thrustmaster. Well, some big fuel saving, that is for sure. Some strategy playing out for this Thrustmaster 240. Back to the front, though, of the GTDs, where, we mentioned it, switch for the lead, and now it's Rexy on the hunt. Team Redline 171, the winners from 2 weeks ago, trying to break away, and I think already what we're starting to see, Peter, 6/10 the margin. The Chevrolet for the 56 Racing team holding on well as to the front of this field. That Ferrari is looking very, very strong.
It is. It was strong at Road Atlanta. Let's see how. I wonder actually if the AO car has just got a slowdown penalty. Just looked a little bit flustered, but it might be more of a disagreement in traffic. The red line Ferrari right in there behind. Yeah, I think the AO car is maybe serving a slowdown penalty at some point, because looks to really drop pace quite dramatically. Not sure on that one, but it honestly didn't look particularly difficult on that replay on the bottom of your screen there. Very curious. Very
I was going to jump in here. I think I saw too wide from those prototypes, which really pinched that exit from that GT car. I bet you he had to lift to not push into those competitors.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering as well, actually. And so if you're Tristan Iglesias, one thing that in 2023 was a big story was Iglesias, at that time with IMSA Esports, seemingly always at the front of the field and qualifying in a Porsche, often beating Kawanda. Now he's joined up with the team. He's going to be racing next year in the Porsche Esports Super Cup with the likes of Josh Rogers and so many other Kawanda greats as well. He's done it once more, put it at the front of the field. Race pace, we'll now have to see long run what they can do. And I go back to the end of round 1 where Michael Gianni, in a bit of a situation, right, where Joey, there was some pressure on him. He was trying to make his way forward, and I don't think he made a wrong decision, to be clear. He had to try and go for a move. But going for a move rather, slightly affected things. And so the same thing that now I've got to wonder, if you're the Williams Esports Chill Blast car, you sat behind for so long in round number 1, are you going to go aggressive now that you're right on the back of the race leader?
It's the race pace difference, right? It's the qualifying effort with the low fuel and just all out crank it to 12 out there and see how fast it can go versus putting in that full fuel, putting in the race setup, and then letting the driver kind of feel everything out. It really is just a management game every single lap of how much can you scrub the tires in the front versus having the nose still bite and go towards the apex. How much can you roll on that throttle before those rears start to break loose and you have those oversteer moments or go jumping over those chicane curbs. So it is up to each one of those drivers and those race setups, that management style, but it certainly seems that Williams Esports Chill Blast has a very good race car underneath them.
And well, they've got their sister team behind and a bit of a margin then to the next to the BMW, so Danny Lorenzo's got some work to do. Christian Hillgard in the fiercely forward Cadillac is then in front of Diogo Pinto in the BMW M Team Redline car. That's the top 6, currently split by just about 8 seconds or so, with several passes through traffic and about 30 minutes complete, which does mean, Peter, we're starting to close on the opening of the pit stop window for these GTPs. They can go at least around 40 minutes on fuel. If you're saving a bit of fuel, you might be even able to stretch it to about 50 minutes or so.
And there's a few good opportunities here to do some big fuel saving. Turn 1, I think, most notably. But again, if you're in the prototype, fuel saving is the least of your concerns when you're trying to squeeze past just one more GT car, just one more. And that's kind of what we saw there with the third place, number 33 Williams car of Alexander Spets. He got a little bit snagged up there, but big challenge here for the overall race lead is Pablo Lazar's having to do everything he can to keep Jaden Munoz behind as they cut their way through the traffic. Just fantastic stuff. It's like, oh my word, this is so tight as they come through.
And around goes the Chill Blast car, race winners from the AMD 240. Like you were just saying, temptation, one more GTD car, it all goes wrong.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it all stacked up down there. You saw them 3 wide going into that turn 7 corner entrance, and I think the only thing that the Chill Blast team can kind of say out of that is hopefully we don't have any damage and we're still pointing the right way right now, at least.
What the question will be, is there damage we can't see? Maybe to the underside of the car. There is plenty of the downforce generated there, and he's 4 wheels off the track, trying to cut underneath a Ford Mustang. Race Clutch has gone 4 wheels off the track around the outside. It's like we threw traffic chaos back into things. Grid and Go's Porsche is going to make their move on Race Clutch, who lost momentum as a result of all of that. Throw a move back to the inside from Sean Campbell, never going to stick. Mounting over the curbs. Peter, they've forgotten they've still got 2 hours and 10 minutes left to go in this race, haven't they?
Well, that's huge for your championship leader. The number 5 Williams Esports Chill Blast dropped down to 6th place, but loses 8 critical seconds. And like you said, have they got any damage? We can't see very much yet, but you never know. There could be something niggling away in that cockpit. But we talked about how tight it was going through traffic, and Williams Esports Chill Blast crew were trying to get a move and get the race lead away. Let's get another look at it and see what happens. The CrowdStrike car is, of course, getting that first look at each corner, so can sort of set the tone a little bit, and he very much sets the tone, parks it on the inside, and then there's just no room. You can't blame the Mercedes there either, the GT car, just minding his own business, and that was just 3 into 2 doesn't go. There's certain doors that I can't fit through, and that's why.
And while all that's happening, there's another Williams Esports car that's on the hunt. No traffic in front of them, but Alexander Spets trying to shape himself up for a move, forces Pablo Lazar to go defensive. And I think now with a little bit more of an impetus in some ways for Williams Esports Racing Prodigy, they've got less margin now behind as the BS competition BMW starts to close up as well. Getting through the traffic once again, it's going to allow Lazar an opportunity to extend the margin, at least momentarily. But I've got to assume that at the end of this stint, goes back to I think what Peter or Joey, maybe it was you that was saying it slightly earlier, Acura starting to look a little bit slower on the longer run, BMW starting to come back to life.
You don't know until you pretty much burn the whole fuel tank off of the thing and see how aggressive the drivers are being. I do want to throw maybe one more variable into this whole equation here. I do think our leader in the number 4 car is maybe fuel saving just a touch going into some of these brake zones, and that's really allowing those Williams Esports cars to be far, far, far more aggressive on the beginning half of the corners.
A little bit more aggressive in the fights behind. B.S. Turner trying to hold on to 8th position from Damon Woods, who has already climbed 9 positions so far, and what is a quite beautiful Dory Sports liveried Chevrolet. Got the streaks of the American flag stretching over each side of the car. It's definitely a contender for one of the best looking cars on the grid, but can they slide their way past the taco machine? Barnevel's not going to fight that one too much. Nice little switch off to turn number 1.
Ooh, but a little kiss on the way through there for Barneveld into the back of the Corvette, but they both get away with it. I love that split livery there of the Turner competition, yellow and blue, and the zebra stripes of BS competition. Those colours, particularly the Turner colours, been with us for so many years, and they were actually inspired by the mid-1990s Renault touring cars in the British Touring Car Championship. They were in that kind of yellow and blue colour, and that's where they got the colours from.
Well, Coanda Esports almost learned a little bit more about just how yellow the left side of that BMW was with how close they got through traffic. There has been plenty of moments where I can see Joey and Peter, they can see me as well, where we've been oohing and eyeing, gasping and just hoping that there's not contact, because there are some aggressive moves in traffic being thrown. Purple and orange slowly charging their way forward, but it's been a slow roll so far. Have seen the 2 teammates switch around though, and so now Charlie Collins sits in front of Mitchell DeYoung. And I think one thing that's pretty cool for Coanda is, even though they're starting from the back and have a lot of work to do, I mentioned it slightly earlier, Peter, they've just celebrated the Porsche Night of Champions. Basically the entire team is at the team facility for this weekend, and they had to make the drive back to their hub to go racing this weekend. But that sort of an event, it's all about celebrating the year that has been.
That's right, yes, and it's for all Porsche, not only Porsche factory drivers, Porsche contracted drivers, but Porsche customer racers as well, and many, many others. And what Coanda Esports do for Porsche is very much a part of that. They're very much their virtual works team, if you like, and going to the Night of Champions is very, very special. And the deals that have been done in that place, they call it the casino. In it, there is no gambling that goes on, but they call it the casino, which is a big building where they have that Night of Champions at Weissach, at the home of Porsche Motorsport. And yeah, there's been some discussions over there, and I'm reliably informed that they have an excellent drinks cabinet too.
So I think you and I need to try and finagle an invite for next year. I do know Sebastian Job was out there, of course, celebrating his Porsche Esports Super Cup Championship win from this year, of course, as well. So plenty of sim racing activities there, and of course there was some social media news. Sebastian Job being given an opportunity to potentially step into a Formula 1 car, so there's some interesting content that will be coming on social media around that, so definitely keep an eye out. This Channel 199 sim racing car, though, mentioned Owen Carroll taking the start, means Casey Kerwin's going to be sliding in slightly later. They were involved in an incident from what I can tell, because after running up inside of the top 10 for the opening stages of the race, as we close in on the pit stop window, drop back down to 14th position and now sit behind Mitchell DeYoung. So not quite sure exactly what's happened there, but hoping that we can hear from pit lane and from Casey Kerwin sooner rather than later. That's the great thing about the sim racing world, Joey. You can always just drag them in for a little bit of a chat.
It is nice to be able to yank them by the collar and say, hey, what happened out there? Because I was wondering the same thing from that Channel 199 car as we watched this GT car battle. I think this is basically 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th place, all running very, very closely together. And I think that we're going to be having Casey Kerwin hop in after Owen Carroll. This is that number 95 car, that Channel 199 car that we were talking about just a minute ago.
And well, I think Casey Kerwin's joining us in the broadcast booth. So Joey, you've got a chance to chat with the driver of the Cadillac number 95.
Well, Casey, nice of you to sneak in the back door here while we were talking. Good to have you in the booth.
Yeah, thanks. It's a bit eventful so far, so I've enjoyed my view from the outside so far.
So we all know what happened at the end of last round, but we missed what happened while you guys slipped back a few positions here. Care to fill us in?
So just in one of the, cluster points of getting through the GT traffic at the end of the back straightaway, Owen was going underneath the GT3, and it was kind of a borderline of being in there, and the GT3 kind of started to turn it a bit, which they had every right to, and then Owen was just trying to be a bit cautious and give him more room, so he like went up onto the curb and just bounced really bad off of it and had a quick spin. So that's where we lost the position, or the positions, but we're still not too far out of it, and there's still a long time to go. So car's clean, that's the main thing, and yeah, still plenty to fight for. So.
Well, and there's still 2 hours left. There's still lots of racing to go. Now, you started the car back at Road Atlanta, and Owen is starting the car now here. So maybe you can describe the kind of the differences in your responsibilities to close the race today.
Yeah, I think the person who starts the race, kind of sets up, pit stop times and fuel management and all that for the end, which Owen's really good on the fuel side this week compared to me, which is the main reason why he's starting. And last week I loved traffic, and I feel like my traffic management's pretty good, so that's kind of why I started it at Road Atlanta with all the chaos there. And yeah, so we just kind of flip-flop depending on who feels better. Owen normally qualifies. He's a bit better qualifier than me, and yeah, he starts the car normally as well. So yeah, he's kind of getting us set up for how the pit stops end up at the end, and I think strategies could get a little interesting here. With how long the GTPs can go and whatnot. So, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully, car's still in good shape and in a good position when I get in, and hopefully I can get it as far forward as we can.
I got one more question here for you, Casey. I know that you're always going to have to deal with traffic management out here. Do you have to approach it differently at Indianapolis versus what we saw a couple weeks ago at Atlanta?
Yeah, a little bit different. You have a bit more room and a bit longer braking zones to kind of do some bigger sends in GTP. But there's like, the big thing at Road Atlanta is like getting stuck down the S's. There's nowhere to go. So you literally will lose, 2 or 3 seconds right there. Really, the S's here, the quick chicane, I should say, is kind of the biggest place where you can lose some time and kind of get completely stuck. But here, there's really no place that you get really held where there's nowhere to go. So you can manage it a little bit differently in that sense. But it's still just having to try and time the runs, know if you're going to get there or not. Some of the corners, it's like by the time you dive a GT3, you just lose all that time back by diving them if you would have just waited. So, yeah, the velocity's still about the same, but it's just a little more space here.
It was pretty neat to see you talking about that moment there through the chicane, and then your teammate was actually making the pass as well. So
yeah, it worked out.
So much. Yeah, it worked out. So thank you so much for joining us, and good luck out there when you hop in the car.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was Casey Kerwin helping out, driving that Channel 199 car today.
And well, as we rejoin the GTD class, about 40 minutes in, waiting for that pit stop window to open for the GTPs. The field has started to stretch out a little bit more, and so the traffic is a bit more ever-present at this point. And so nearing in on the start of what will be a 2-hour sprint, you best believe every moment of this race is a flat-out sprint for these drivers. There's no lifting outside of the fuel saving that they are doing. Let's take a look at some of the highlights of what they've been doing to kick off this Thrustmaster 240. Second round of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. And again, for many of these drivers, their last chance in 2024 to show exactly what they have been capable of. And so Coanda Esports starting from the back, well judged from them to work their way through the traffic. Williams Esports a little bit less, unfortunately, fortunate to work their way through. We were almost 3 and 4 wide at times on the pit straightaway. But Peter, that's kind of what you expect when you come here to the Brickyard. It's flat in its nature. It invites opportunities with its 90-degree corners, and it's been a blockbuster of a race so far, including up front, still with half a second between the top two.
It has, and do you know what? I don't know whether to be surprised or not. I suppose I am a bit surprised. I think the traffic has been more perilous here than it was at Road Atlanta. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but I think there's been more interclass problems here at Indy rather than we had at Road Atlanta a few weeks ago.
True. Road Atlanta is also one of those tracks where, be it real or virtual, packing 50-odd cars around it, it always asks for a little bit of drama and chaos, and well, sometimes we tend to get that before we even get to the start line, but at least this year we had no drama until we got to, what was it, turn 3 for the GTDs. Alexander Spetz has been, well, quite patient in the Williams Esports Racing Prodigy entry. And so I'm wondering if he's going to try and go a little bit longer in terms of fuel. Now, let's not forget the BOP for each of these cars did slightly impact their fuel capacity. Back out onto the main straightaway, cutting and dicing their way through some traffic as they now blast past the yard of bricks once again. Pablo Lazar, first time we've seen him in this series. He missed the opening round. He's stepping in to replace Sam Michaels. Been doing a great job so far, Joey, to control things up front.
He is doing a good job to control things, and I think that front straightaway was a good shot to show you how competitive it is out there, that the prototypes are essentially drafting the GT cars. A little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but hey, whatever you got to do to stay in the lead. But look at this traffic down here. I believe this is the number 144, the Mercedes that we're watching here go through turns number 1 and 2. All sorts of stacked up, and we were just talking about the traffic. More and more issues. We're only 40 minutes into this thing.
We've still got 1 hour 57 and 50 seconds left to go. I don't think I'm going to have a voice left by the end of this if the rate of attrition continues to be as high as I think it is. We've had 4 retirements in the GTD, so 32 started. Team Redline, the 170, back-to-back DNFs for them. So their championship charge at this point, their championship defense, basically done and dusted. The World Sim Racing 132, one of a pair of Lamborghinis for the team, and then the 177 Valkyrie Ford Mustang, the 150 McLaren for Mag Performance. Those are the 4 teams that have sat back in the garage and been watching for quite a while. Switch around for second, though, in the class, as now the Corvette, Guile Valero, the 56 Racing team, looking increasingly strong, and Peter Rexy now slides back to third.
Yeah, not been a good phase of the race for the AO Racing team. They started off strong, but now starting to fade a little bit. But fantastic battle at the front in GTD, because we've got a Ferrari leading from a Corvette, from a Porsche, from a Mercedes. Now, there's been a lot of discussion and conjecture and debate in the background over whether the GT cars are balanced out. I think that's all the information you really need. If you've got 4 cars from 4 different marques, and they're all different, they're not just different marques, they have different engines. You've got the Mercedes with a big honky great V8 in the front, you've got the Porsche with the small naturally aspirated flat 6 in the rear, then the Corvette mid-engine but naturally aspirated, and then the turbocharged Ferrari. So they're all completely different configurations, and yet the top 4 up there fighting.
And I guess the thing that sometimes, you could, in the world of video games, make all the cars drive the same, but then that removes some of the fun of what makes sports car racing so interesting, right? That these cars look different, they drive different, they make their speeds in different ways, right? And so that's where the BOP has to come into play, trying to get them as close as possible. And so it's something that, everyone behind the scenes is always trying just to make that a little bit better, often with the help of the teams as well. Back over to the GTPs, lunge up the inside from the Grid and Go Porsche. It's a stamp onto the brakes deep from Johan Royer. Now, Marshall Hubert in the Apex Racing Acura is not going to give this one up easy. But Acura's got some really good drive off the corner, it seems. And as much as there was a bit of questioning about whether on the initial start, Joey, the pole sitter might actually be at a disadvantage, that high revving engine, maybe destined a bit more for IndyCar that we've talked about plenty. It's doing a pretty good job so far to keep this car in the fight.
Well, you guys were just mentioning just the variety of different manufacturers and how they all drive differently in the GT categories. You could say the same thing applies to the prototypes as well, right? We've got different engines, we've got different manufacturers, different designed cars, and it's a handful of them out there. Yes, Acura leading the way, BMW is currently 2-3, but then we've got Cadillac sitting there in the 4th spot. So 3 different manufacturers sitting in the top 4 in the prototypes, as well as the 99 gets really aggressive right there, getting through some of that traffic. I think that was the Team Redline leader that I'm sure was hoping for no door contact with there.
Yeah, typically when you're lapping the race leader of a slower class, you do tend to try and give a bit more space, just in case, but able to work through safely there. Marshall Hubert doing a pretty good job to slice his way through and keep the car behind at a bit of arm's length. And speaking of arm's length, overall lead has been stretched out as well, and so Pablo Lazar has done a pretty good job. We're 45 minutes in and still yet to see a car down to pit lane from the GTP category for fuel. So just keep that in mind. We are yet to see someone decide they need to come in. Given how much fuel saving we've been seeing, Peter, remember we listened in our onboard powered by Thrustmaster, I'm thinking some of these teams are trying to go as long as feasibly possible.
They are. I think there's good opportunity to do it as well. Quite a lot of big braking zones and a lot of corners where you can carry the speed without just not trailing the throttle that little bit, just trying to minimize the throttle input over the course of the lap whilst still maintaining a decent lap time. I think, yeah, that we could see some real differences in those who've been fuel saving hard and those who haven't. Fiercely Forward, one of the first in GTP to pit with their Cadillac. Down the pit road they come. And as far as I can see, this is the first scheduled GTP pit stop with, yes, it is the first scheduled GTP pit stop after 38 laps.
Remember, Christian Hilgard was saying that he's done in the last couple of months about 24 hours worth of laps with the Cadillac at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. He's had a pretty impressive start to the race as well, keeping up towards the front of the field, inside of the front 6 or so, but maybe not minding the fuel as much. This fight, by the way, for what is 4th on back in the GTD, really interesting to keep an eye on, because the Mercedes for the Apex Racing team, Johan Harv, might actually be at a slight disadvantage here as we get to the end of the GTD fuel stint, because if we're thinking that fuel savings, what a lot of these teams are trying to do, I don't think we've talked about the weather conditions yet, Joey, but it's pretty cool. We're racing in the virtual November at Indianapolis, which tends to be quite chilly in November for those that don't know. And so the air temperature is as cold as you can get on iRacing, 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Track temperature is going to trend with that as well. So it's going to be cool, which gives you more grip, which means you use a bit more fuel being aggressive on throttle.
When we talk about temperatures, it doesn't matter if it's ambient temperature or track temperature. The cooler you go, yes, generally the more grip you get, and also the thicker the air is, right? So that way you can really go in and stomp on the brakes when you need to. Looks like we're going to get a replay of the Channel 199 car, or I'm sorry, this is the number 199 car, the Apex Racing Team car. This is one of the Mercedes. Is headed down the back straightaway into turn number 7 here. Going to jump on the brakes hard. You see him go side by side directly in front. And a little bit of contact there with the BMW sends that Mercedes around. And we've seen that from multi-class traffic, but that was definitely still all GT cars this time.
I think a peace offering of some tacos is going to be warranted there. Two teams that have had their fair share of drama as well. A couple more teams, by the way, on pit lane. Cowander's number 18 has come in. Charlie Collins out. Xander Reed's going to step in. That is still only the second scheduled pit stop as we near 50 minutes complete. And so it goes back to that fuel saving that many of these GTPs have been doing. And look at the front of the field. Not 1, not 2, but 3. Danny Alves Lorenzo has joined the party, and 3 cars split by less than half a second. Back onto Holman Boulevard and stacked up behind the big green machine for Maniti. The 178 is going to compromise Pablo Lazar. Danny Lorenzo is going to try and get to the inside of Alexander Spetz, but 1, 2, 3 stay as they are for the time being.
And the door just shuts for the GTPs. They get up the inside, and then at some point the GT cars have got to turn in, and you just have to hope, if you're in the prototype, that there's enough room for you to just squeeze on by. But that was really well managed there by our race leader, by that number 4 CrowdStrike Acura of Pablo Lazar. He just placed that red and black machine exactly where he needed to try and maintain his position, and then it's up to the Williams car, the 33, and the BS competition car to then take the rest. This is a really, really impressive first stint from Pablo Lazar.
And now officially, as we rumble back towards the start line, 40 laps complete for these drivers. We are nearing the edge of that fuel capacity, so at some point, they're all going to be in. Lorenzo lunges to the inside. Does Alexander Spetz give him some room? Going to get chalked up behind the Solpec Porsche, the GTD. Now, with nowhere to go, Danny Lorenzo runs into the back of the GT3 entry, taking advantage. Diogo Pinto, newly crowned IndyCar butt kicker iRacing Pro Series champion, says thank you very much, let me grab 3rd for myself.
Diogo Pinto with an excellent racecraft move, basically saw the opportunity, went down all the way to the inside, split that GT car, and has 3rd place because of it. I was also going to mention, remember what happened to that Williams Esports Chill Blast car? He was sitting in 2nd place maybe 20-30 minutes ago and had that incident down there in turn number 7. Well, guess what? They're right back on the tail end of this train, sitting in 5th place.
I mean, I've got to say, the GTP, since they've been introduced to full metal action, have been amazing to watch, and we are being treated to a similarly spectacular race right now. I don't think I saw anyone peel off to the pit lane this time by in this leading group, as once again past traffic they go. That's a drive-through penalty for the BS Turner car for turning in on the 199. Taco's not enough as a form of reprimand, apparently.
I think that's very harsh, personally. For the record, I would not want to be a race steward. No, thank you. But for me, that's a tough deal. I think the ART car was too deep on the brakes. But there we go. Move for the overall lead now. Out around the outside, and William hit the front. Wow.
Well, I tell you what, that's a contender for our Thrustmaster move of the race, and we've still got so much time left to go. It was through traffic where we're hearing a bit of contact for the CrowdStrike number 4, who now bullies the PGZ 114. You give and you take in traffic, and it's taken a bit from CrowdStrike.
We were talking just all the time about the management, right? And how much can you lunge on those GT cars, right? We heard Casey Kerwin say that it was just a little bit too deep of a lunge from that number 4 car. Got him out wide in turn number 1, and it was all history from there with that Williams Esports Racing prodigy taking over the lead. And here we go. We've got all of them coming into pit lane.
And well, I think that's maybe why there was a bit of urgency when the opportunity was presented to try and make a move. Frustration from Pablo Lazar as well. You can see he's not very happy with how the stint ended. You can see his teammate sitting there on his phone, not quite sure if we're going to see a switch. Team Redline, a little bit cheeky, passing on the inside in pit lane, but Pablo Lazar now has got to try and get his way into pit lane. This seems to be the limit though. We've gone 43 laps, only one car is still out there. It's the Channel 199 Sim Racing Cadillac, Peter, that's trying something different.
And we have got a proper Indianapolis race on pit road here. I love it. Everyone coming in on the same lap. You've got to hit your marks just perfect, get the pit work done, and rush out without breaking the speed limit. So really, really difficult execution there. Oh,
Peter, just word from the team in race control. The reason why Pablo Lazar was so frustrated, he sped on pit lane entry. The CrowdStrike number 4 is out of this race.
There you go.
Speechless. You control the opening 50-odd minutes of the race, and Joey, one, can you call it careless mistake, costs you everything.
I gotta say that the other cars are probably really, really lucky as well, because that Team Redline car, I noticed, had a huge lockup. Let's watch the Channel 199 car as they enter pit road, but it's a little bit deceiving because you're still going around that right turn when those cones come up, but man, don't beat yourself. That's a golden rule.
And now we'll have to work through the strategy on pit lane, because there is some variance in pit stop times. Note, for example, the Coanda number 18 now sits in what is net 3rd position. They only stop for 33 seconds. Majority of the rest of the field closer to 50 seconds, and so it's Fiercely Forward that will take over the race lead in a few moments' time. Sitting behind them, it's about 5.5 seconds to the 33, the Williams Esports Racing Prodigy car, and then the 18 for Coanda before BMW M Team Redline, BMW M Team BS Plus competition, and then the recovering Williams Esports Chill Blast. And that's just one cycle of pit stops. We've still got at least 2 more for these prototypes.
Is it going to come down to pit strategy? I mean, because it's how close do you want it on track? I mean, so many cars fighting for the win, and it could well come down to the battle on pit road and getting that just right. And we literally just said it, hadn't we? It's about executing, getting in, don't get any penalties. And well, sorry, Lewis McGlade, maybe the curse of the commentator is in fact real after all.
Oh, you're going to trigger some rants from Lewis into the YouTube chat, so I apologize to our viewers for that. The penalty was so significant, though, because iRacing, if you take a penalty while you take service, gives you basically an extra buffer for the grace of letting you do both at the same time. And so just watch here. You can see the gap in front of him. It's so tempting. It's so tantalizing. Look how deep the cones are. And while, yes, BMW M Team Redline have locked up, you could, I think, clearly see Pablo Lazar forgot where the cones were. It's a simple mistake. It's cost them 90 seconds in pit lane. We're almost an hour complete though with the Thrustmaster 240. Let's spool back and take a look at some of the highlights. Pablo Lazar would have enjoyed this one. The punch of the throttle, the green flag dropping, and CrowdStrike and iRacing by Kawanda leading into the opening corner. We've seen plenty of race control intervention. Unfortunately, it's been in the GTDs where 4 retirements so far. Valkyrie's Ford Mustang amongst them in the 177, but maybe most shockingly, the Team Redline number 170. For Luke Bennett, it's back-to-back races. The 170 will not see the finish of this race. It's just been a story of craziness through traffic. Craziness that Kawanda, after starting from the back of the field, have been trying to avoid, all as the iRacing by Kawanda car put it on pole position, but Rexy has slid back in the recent stages to 3rd in the running order. Jaden Munoz was on the hunt for the Williams Esports Chill Blast car. They won a couple of weeks ago, a bit too aggressive through traffic. He's had to fight his way back into contention, as have plenty of others. Unfortunately for the 199 Mercedes Apex Racing Team machine, trying to get to the apex of the corner, slightly overshot the braking zone, turned in by BS Turner. Just another example of the chaos that we've seen so far. Arjuna Kankipati alongside of the ever wonderful Peter Mackay and Joey Atterbury. We refocus in on the fight for the GTD lead, right on the cusp of their respective pit window opening, Joey. And look how feisty that 56 Racing Team car is looking. A French-powered outfit looking to try and show their might at the very top level of sim racing.
That's Gail Valero in that white number 56 Corvette that you just heard Arjuna mentioning about, and riding on board with the Team Redline number 171 of Florian Lebigra coming out onto that front straightaway. I think that the Ferrari has done a terrific job to kind of manage the race once they've gotten out front, but if there is kind of the one change that we saw, remember Rexy started this race on pole. He has slipped down a couple positions. If anything, it is that white 56 Racing Team Corvette that's on the charge, Peter.
It is, yeah. It's great to see the Corvette running strong up ahead. It was a car that started off its life as a GTE or a GTLM car, but has been reworked. The 06 version, it's actually a new car but on the same base, and has been on the iRacing platform for a little while now, and it's now starting to find its feet. But this Redline Ferrari, they've really been the steam train so far, both at Road Atlanta and here today at Indianapolis. And Florian Lebigra, the man from Bordeaux in France, well, he's showing that he's putting in a vintage performance so far.
A nice Bordeaux sort of a performance so far, one may even argue. Christian Hilgard, though, you know, we talk about GTD strategy opening up. I mean, Fiercely Forward have taken advantage of the GTP strategy to cycle to the net race lead. Remember, first team on pit lane, and they've also only stopped for around 42 seconds, so they haven't put a full tank of fuel into the car. My suspicion is they'll get Marcos Nunez into this number 11 sooner rather than later, and so maybe a slightly shorter stint incoming from this Cadillac. A very similar sort of a story that we're seeing from the number 18 from Kawanda. I mentioned this as well. Xander Reed's taken over from Charlie Collins, but 33.3 seconds in the pit lane for this Porsche 963. A driver change takes 30 seconds, so they've basically done the driver change and then 3 extra seconds of fuel, as well as 4 Michelin tires. It has given them 14 positions since the start of the race. However, they are going to have to pay this back at some point towards the end of the race. But this is what makes endurance racing so great. Whether it's a 24-hour race at Daytona or a 2-hour and 40-minute race around wherever the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship goes, Peter, 2 hours and 40 minutes is an odd time for a race. It means unique strategies come to the forefront.
It's set up that way very deliberately. It works really, really well with the fuel tank size, both of the GTP cars, but also the GTDs as well. It really opens up that strategical window, and there's a few different ways you can go about it. And of course, both of those Kawanda Porsches in GTP started well out of position, starting at the back of the grid. That's not where they're used to starting, so they're having to play an alternative strategy. They're having to take the risk. And what have they got up their sleeve? It's like a game of poker. You can just see them starting to play their cards now, and you're thinking, what are they up to? What is going on in that team room right now?
Well, I can tell you, they're starting to cook something up in GTD as well, because iRacing by Coanda, who remember put the car on pole position to start this race off, well, they're going to trigger a whole flurry of pit stops for the GTDs. So Rexy's in, followed in by Door Esports in their Chevrolet Corvette. Team PGZ, the 114, that finished second, let's not forget, in our AMD 240 from Road Atlanta. They're in as well, but these are the first takers. What we did see at Road Atlanta, though, Joey, was that cars somewhat was struggling to get to the top of the hour, right? They had to save a bit of fuel, whereas here, even with the cool conditions, it seems to be quite easy to get 62 minutes out of the fuel tank.
I was just doing the math, and yeah, it's nice and convenient with these GT cars. You're right, about 61 minutes plus our leader here in the Corvette and the Ferrari are going here this extra lap. So yeah, a good 62 minutes, and the GTPs, by my math, if you had it full at the beginning, is about 51 to 52 minutes. So that stretches it a little bit further as well than what we saw at Atlanta. Maybe just open up those windows a little bit, kind of expand the strategy. And as we talk about it, here are our two leaders. This is Team Redline as well as 56 Racing Team in this Corvette coming down pit lane.
Florian Lebigra, Guile Valero. Are we going to see any driver changes? The 171, the second driver in that car, is Enzo Benito, who's got some of the most fabulous hair in all of sim racing. The other driver in the 156 is, well, team manager Antoine Bastard, so expect plenty of speed there. It goes from bad to worse for CrowdStrike's number 4. Already we'd seen the sister number 3 get a drive-through penalty. This time, contact with the 110, drive-through penalty. Pablo Lazar, I can't even imagine how he's feeling right now, Peter.
No, I bet he's absolutely devastated, really, after it's a huge mistake and huge consequences. Now, we've been pontificating what the number 18 crew are up to in that Coanda Porsche, and Charlie Collins has very kindly come to join us. Charlie, we're trying to guess what you guys are up to on fuel strategy. How is it all being mapped out at the moment?
Yeah, hi guys. So yeah, I think we're doing a little bit different, being a bit more aggressive, let's say. I think people are trying to save a pit stop. We've kind of gone the other way around and trying to make all the other pit stops shorter. So yeah, let's see. Unfortunately had a spin right at the start of the race with just a GT3, which kind of put us back a bit, but you know, let's see. But I think being aggressive, and I'm hoping it's going to pay off.
One thing that surprised us a lot is that the traffic appears to be even more, ferocious than what it was even at Road Atlanta. Tell us what it's like in the cockpit of one of these GTP cars trying to get through 32 GTDs.
Oh, it is really tough, I'll be honest. I don't think my heart rate gets much higher. It's just, I think especially with the GTP, it's like the aero platform is super unstable and super twitchy in the high speed, so any small correction normally leads to like a big change in how the car's reacting. So you really have to be precise, and yeah, I think that's why it's carnage, right? Because if you mess it up, it really goes wrong, and yeah, it's really tough.
Now, of course, 2 bullets in the gun with 2 cars for Coanda Porsche. Are you guys working 2 different strategies on, or are you going for a kind of similar idea with both cars?
No, you hit it on the head for the first time. Yeah, 2 different strategies, splitting the cars, having 2 different options and seeing which one's the fastest. We came into the race, unfortunately, starting with a Q-band for both cars, so we thought we'll give it a go and split the strategies, and yeah, let's see. Quite a long race to go, and yeah, let's hope both cars do well.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing how it plays out. Great job so far, and good luck for the rest of the race. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, guys.
So as we watch Charlie Collins' teammate getting really involved in some fighting there, Alexander Spetz had to lift off eventually. Xander Reed was not going to lift off the throttle, and the Porsche 963 holds on to second for the time being. All as GTD pit stops continue to just sequence their way on through. I've seen again our fair share of change on strategy in that regard. Plenty of mix-up, and so plenty to walk through there. But the one thing that stands out to me, Joey, when I look at the GTD pit stop times, is how few cars have put in a full tank of fuel. Seems like plenty of teams have tried to gain some track position by short filling in this first pit stop.
You're 100% right. Going down through the order, only 31 seconds of fuel for our leader, while you go all the way back to some of these other cars like Drago Racing taking on 42 seconds of fuel. Even Vestasport taking on 42 seconds of fuel. Some of the other cars even further down taking on 46 seconds of fuel. So kind of to your point there's some strategy games being played, and I wonder if it's going to be the kind of the race that you're going to be the first car to pit and basically get back out there and manage the traffic.
Based on what we've seen so far, would prefer to be in front of a group rather than behind, but you know, there's also that fuel saving element which has to be factored in as well. And it goes to what we were seeing from Agustin Canapino slightly earlier, right? Where he had that massive lift into turn number 1 and no one was wanting to be his friend, and they all tried to give it a big send around the outside. So competing priorities between the different drivers, and their discretion ultimately rises to the forefront. Gap between the front sort of 7 or so in this GTP class though is starting to ebb and flow a bit more as the traffic's gotten a bit more separated out around the facility. So second and third, they're right on top of one another. Then about 3.5 seconds back to this grouping for fourth, which is being led by Chris Lullum, who's taken over from Diogo Pinto. And then a 4-car group with 7 seconds behind to Saltpec and Simufy. So that phase of the race where all these drivers just trying to leave their teammate with as best a situation as possible. Give your teammate basically the maximum opportunity of maximizing the race results.
That's your job, right, as a starting driver, is to hand over a good condition car to your teammate, and then it's just like a relay race. It doesn't matter if you're running a 4x100 sprint or if you're in the pool doing a swimming relay race as well. You have to hand it off to your competitor. It looks like we've got a replay here of the 178 car.
So it's the big green machine for Maniti Racing, who have a lunge up the inside. That's Sven Haase in the 102 grid and go. A very short pit stop for the 1 and 2 as well. So they're trying to really leapfrog their way through the field. 3 wide with some traffic. The minor bit of contact initially, and then almost saved by BS Competition there as they're brought back into a straight line.
That was a good save there for the Maniti McLaren to keep that one from spinning, and that could have taken a lot of the leading GTP cars. So quick hands there from Tim Matske. The totally unique sound of the McLaren V8. It's not an engine that's shared with any other kind of platform or manufacturer. It's totally their own, and it just sounds so unique. And this is a seriously exotic car. When you get up close to one of these 720S GT3s and you see the big butterfly doors coming up, it is a thing of beauty. And I think if there were more of them out there, you would see a lot of success for this car. It's a really, really good package, particularly in sprint racing as well. I think and doesn't it look cool too?
Well, sprint racing in the IMSA paddocks where it's seen most of its success as well, right? At least on this side of the pond. So it's definitely one of those cars that I think looks amazing. It's got that GT sports car look to it in a way that maybe some other cars don't. Let's not forget as well, we've got 8 different manufacturers in this class, so we're not lacking for options at this point. Of course, you have the BMW M4, the Corvette Z06, Ferrari 296, Ford Mustang, Lamborghini Huracan, the McLaren, of course, but the Mercedes AMG and Porsche 911. To be joined by the brand new, at least to iRacing, Acura NSX Evo, and that's going to be released in next week's build, and so much more is going to be coming as well. We've talked about it in last week's broadcast, or a couple of weeks ago, a new tire model for the GTPs, so that's going to be really interesting as well. Debris, that's been completely revamped as well. A video released by iRacing sent shockwaves, I think, through parts of the community. And again, just a reminder, head on to iRacing.com to learn more about all these new developments and about how to start your iRacing career, because 50% off new memberships through January the 25th by heading on to iRacing.com/holiday-sale. And yeah, I mean, Joey, that's something that makes sports car racing so cool, right? We talked about the BOP making the cars a little bit more equal, but it's how different all the cars are as well.
And also track evolution. I think that the dirt road side of things has been a little bit spoiled with how much the track changes, and now the road race stuff is finally getting their fair share of it with that video that you were mentioning, Arjuna. Go onto YouTube, look up iRacing, and basically look for that debris. When you run over the gravel trap, you can actually drag it back onto the racetrack. That's all going to be modeled. So if you have somebody leading this race, go through the grass, go through the gravel, well, guess what? Everybody else is going to have to drive through it after as well.
Yeah, and that's one of those things about real racing that sometimes I think some drivers say, well, you don't get that in sim racing. Now you will, and now you'll have to be a bit more careful. I did mention this wonderful livery, by the way, on the Corvette for Door Esports. Above the way the American flag is draped over the angles of the car. They've been slowly and quietly charging their way on forward. Peter, they started back in 18th position. They're in 7th right now. And the Corvettes, let's not forget, they're looking strong, but they're slightly on a different strategy to the car in front of them, the 56 Racing Team machine that did a full service last time by.
I think the Corvettes are looking very strong. Yeah, really, really good. And I like that little touch as well from Door Esports to, of course, the German team to include the American flag for this American series or North American series. And yeah, there's an idea maybe for future. You're involved in these sorts of things, Arjuna. Maybe we could include a trip north of the border to Mosport in a future season. I'm a big, big fan of Mosport. Love it.
How much are you, I mean, you said you don't want to be a race control steward. I mean, if you volunteer to be a steward for that race, I tell you what, we could talk about it.
Okay, deal.
Okay, discussions will happen off the air, and we'll figure out if Peter Mackay gets his wish. Didn't I commentate on you in the performance playoff at Mosport as well?
That's not why I brought it up, but yes, you did.
Just didn't you do well in that race?
Mm-hmm. I did okay.
Did you win?
I did okay.
Oh.
No, I didn't win. I came third. I didn't really understand how the tyres worked at the time. I need to take tyres because they won't last. It turns out that was a mistake. I might have won otherwise, but
how time flies. That was, what, 4 years ago. You were racing against people that are in the IMSA paddock nowadays as well. Now we're together commentating on what is one of my favorite things to do all year. GTPs getting ready to potentially see some of these drivers start to ratchet up the tempo, given that they slightly short-filled in their last time down pit lane. And with, I think it's fair to say, gaps opening up, I think it's probably pedal to the metal time, go, 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 and start to build your advantage. You can see BMW BS competition slightly behind the BMW M Team Redline car, but all as with an hour and 15 minutes complete here from the racing capital of the world, the Thrustmaster 240 rolls on. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back live from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, live on IMSA TV.
At Michelin, we don't just race for medals. We race to test, to learn, to find answers, to discover innovative ways. We race to take on challenges, to overcome technology limits, to improve the way we all move, to make possible what is not. No, at Michelin, we do not race just for glory. We race for change.
Today's coverage of the Thrustmaster 240 is brought to you by Traction, the official media partner of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Visit traction.gg today. And by Thrustmaster. Drive into a new era of sim racing. Feel racing sensations like never before with the T598 and its direct axial drive motor, the new generation of direct drive. This motor allows for perfect, clear wheel rim motion with no cogging for high-fidelity force feedback. Get yours at Thrustmaster.com today. And by Michelin, the official tire of IMSA. Michelin is the exclusive tire provider for all classes of the WeatherTech Championship, Michelin Pilot Challenge, and VP's Racing Sports Car Challenge Series. We've got 1 hour and 24 minutes left to go. Fights all the way through our field of 49 cars. And boy, what a sight to do it. The racing capital of the world, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Arjuna Kankipati joined alongside by Peter Mackay and Joey Atterbury here live on IMSA TV. And Peter, strategy is always a hot button topic in endurance racing, and we're at that point of the race, we've still got no idea how things are going to play out.
No, we don't. There's a lot of different ways to look at this. Of course, we've got Coanda number 18 throwing in an alternative strategy. And remember, one really interesting comment that Charlie Collins said, he reckons that there's teams that are trying to save a pit stop, whereas they're going for short little sprints. Very interesting with a pit stop as long as this. So, very interesting to see how that one is going to play out. But what we do know is we can offer you a 50% discount. I mean, I'm from Scotland. I love a discount. It's my favourite word in the English language. 50%. I'm going to get on that.
Yeah, absolutely. New memberships 50% off through January the 25th. We've just finished off Black Friday, but there's still an opportunity for you to jump in through the holidays or to gift the gift of iRacing to someone in your life. I stumbled over my words there because my eyes did not deceive me. Pablo Lazar parked on the outside of Holman Boulevard in the grass, suboptimal to say the very least. And if you're watching this and wondering what all is going on, head on to iRacing.com/IMSA-esports to learn about the drivers, our schedule, and where we've still got left to go. 2 rounds in 2025 before we crown our champions. And it all builds, of course, to the Rolex 24 in 2025, which I got to go there for the very first time this year. Joey, I've got to say, I don't think there's many more special places to be than the grid walk moments before the race gets underway.
It's so cool, and really it doesn't matter which IMSA event that you really go to, whether it's Daytona, whether it's Sebring. If you're lucky enough to go to Watkins Glen or Indianapolis or Road Atlanta or any of the places that they go and visit, I do want to echo your point about how packed that grid walk really is at Daytona pre-race. It's almost like a mosh pit as we get a potential change for position here. I think that this is going to be Munoz going up the inside, or at least forcing the issue. He's still side by side, a little bit of contact right there. Now going to get boxed out by some GT cars. So I believe that's going to be Lorenzo now. Danny Lorenzo trying to force the issue in the defensive moment here. Let's see if Munoz is going to try to make the pass to the outside.
And Sean Campbell behind in the Cadillac has closed up once again. So Race Clutch just biding their time and trying to achieve a decent result by staying out of trouble for these two. Contact seems to have left their car still factory condition. No lasting damage from either of them, but this was a little bit aggressive, maybe over the line, some would argue, but Munoz is going to now pinch as best as he can the zebra to the inside. He'll sweep up high and try and arc through the corner and just give it enough room. That was about as close as you could ask for. Door Esports says, get me out of this one. 3 of you argue in front of me, please, rather than alongside. The 56 Racing team's the one that's worried about all of this. Onto Holman Boulevard, flip-flop through the chicane, and that's not where you're meant to go in either case. Sean Campbell saying thank you very much, 2 for 1. I'll take it.
And Sean Campbell, I mean, he's right on the same strategy as these other cars here. Oh, so close there. It's a number 5 Williams Chill Blast car gets all locked up there. Oh, another big slide as well, but surprised the 89 didn't get away with a slowdown penalty there as they now battle away. The 89 and the 5 here, the 2 BMWs, the Chill Blast Williams BMW and the BS competition car absolutely playing for keeps. And Sean Campbell in that Race Clutch Cadillac, he's saying, see you later guys, you have your own little fight there.
Yeah, this is not maybe the smartest, and so I think finally Grid and Go Ferrari is going to split them up, and Lorenzo's going to grab the track position, albeit for the time being, just because they now cycled back around to the front of the GTDs, just the AO Racing by Coanda and Team Redline machines to navigate through. And maybe then they'll be settled back into a prototype-only battle for next little bit of time. This is the battle for 5th, let's not forget. They are 4.5 seconds behind Silly Lolly in the BMW M Team Redline number 20. And then, of course, the number 18 and the 33, Kawanda, still sit in front of the Williams Esports Racing Prodigy car. A little less fuel and clearly helping them just maintain track position for the time being. I did see that the CrowdStrike number 4 was off the track, and well, now they're down on pit lane, Joey. I think this is the end of their day.
Yeah, let's see if we can queue up this replay here. I believe this will be the number 4 incident. So this is on the beginning half of the racetrack. This is going through turn number 4. Let's look towards the chicane right here. And oh my goodness, that's what I was talking about. You got to be able to survive the chicane. You saw him, he couldn't get the nose turned all the way in, so he opted to try to straight line it, and it just upset the car too much into the tires.
And so it kind of explains what BS Competition and the Williams Esports Chill Blast car were trying to do when they were, you know, either side of their respective GTD moment of traffic. And so split second, we were talking really high-speed decision-making, but big consequences when you get it wrong at the end of the day. An hour and 20 minutes left to go, though. Still expecting a couple of these teams and drivers in maybe in the next 5 or 10 laps. It's going to leave them with one stop left after the next trip down pit lane. And as we've called out, it's Kawanda on that slightly different strategy, being a little bit more inclined to split the stints up and be a bit more aggressive between each of their trips down pit lane. GTD, though, let's go check in over there, because Florian Lebiga, Team Redline 171, Peter, through all that pit stop strategy that we're talking about, now 6.5 seconds clear of Rexy, with the Mercedes for the Apex Racing team now up in 3rd.
So a good run from Apex Racing team. They qualified up the sharp end, but they've moved forward well. But yeah, it's so hard to look past this 171 Ferrari crew, a Team Redline. Florian Lebiga driving beautifully. Really, really strong start for this crew to this season. I mean, in complete contrast to their teammates. That's the bit that just astounds me, is how different that has been. But Florian Lebiga and Enzo Benito, they are just in the groove right now. And what also surprised me on those GTD pit stops, they went an hour and 3 minutes on a tank. So there's definitely a good bit of fuel saving to be had out there.
And so it's going to mean that you can, assuming you go long in the first 2 stints, you can come down to pit lane conceivably with as little as maybe 35, 36 minutes left in the race. And at that point, I start to wonder, with these cool conditions that we're seeing, we're heading into the sunset as well. Joey, I know you can change tires at the same time as doing fuel, but when you're not taking a full tank, are we going to see some teams maybe taking 2 or no tires in the final portion of the race?
If it comes down to a splash and dash situation, sure, right? You don't want to sit on pit lane any longer than what you need to, but I think he had said it takes about 30 seconds or so to fill up the car with fuel, and so I assume it probably takes a little bit less than that to put 4 tires on this thing. I think that if the fuel time will take the same amount as the tires, put tires on the car no matter what. If you're going to lose time, if you're going to bleed time by putting tires on the car, then yeah, maybe it's an option that you select 2 of them, and you got to think it'd probably be the left 2 around this place. You beat on that front left pretty hard here.
That is one thing to also keep in mind, right, is that I think this is one of those tracks where it's not even on the tires in terms of the wear that you're putting on it. So keep that in mind. High and medium speed corners, slightly different in terms of the direction that you're wrapping around the track than some of the slower speed corners. GTDs, though, starting to now wonder who's going to be the first to take a driver change, because most of the teams have left their starting driver in, as opposed to the prototypes where it's been a bit more inclination to switch after the first stint. We are going to see, as we see Kawanda's number 18, by the way, down on pit lane, I think we are going to see by the time we get to the end of this race, Peter, proper pitch black conditions, and so traffic management at that point, it's going to be really interesting given the level of aggression that we've seen from some. Can they ratchet it back a little bit in the night?
Well, there might have been some lessons learned. I think everyone in the field has had a moment of some description. It's just how big a moment they've had, or how many of them they've had. And well, everybody, if you're a GT car, you've had these two reprobates coming round you. At one point, the 89 BS competition car and the number 5 Williams Chill Blast just absolutely playing for keeps at every single sector of the track, and just barging the way through there at the chicane. And one thing that's also stood out to me is, yes, we saw that mistake from the CrowdStrike Acura losing it at the chicane, but the BMW GTP cars particularly are just touring car style, just straight lining it over that last curve, almost pretending like they're a kind of late 80s DTM car, which of course BMW were a part of. So maybe that's they're in channeling their inner Kurt team or someone like that.
Yeah, I was thinking of plenty of classic.
Never mind.
Yeah, I was thinking of classic BMWs when you mentioned that. But we mentioned that the Apex Mercedes has slowly charged its way up to third. Peter Behrman standing by with Joey Atterbury.
Yeah, Peter Behrman, part of this combination here on the 198 car. How's everything been going so far for you?
I mean, we're alive, so I guess that's got to mean it's good to some degree. A few scary moments at the start, but Johans drove very, very well. Obviously going from 6th to 3rd. A little bit of strategy is probably making us look a bit better than we actually are at the minute. I think you'll see that sort of shake out with the final pit stop for most of these cars. But yeah, we're doing good.
I was going to ask you about that. A little bit of a shorter fill time on this previous pit stop here. You're obviously going to have to pay it back on the end. Are you guys thinking that you might have gained enough track position through this stint that you might not actually lose any positions?
I mean, the main thing was trying to cover off Dino behind. Unfortunately, we didn't quite make that, but he was quite kind to us and let us through. I think he probably wanted to get pulled along by us, but the GTPs have sort of split us apart, so that's worked out for us. It's hard to say how much time we're going to give up at the minute. Yeah, obviously I think the cars ahead are going to be quite tough to pass because we have to give up a bit of time to them. It's more looking over our shoulder, I think, at this point, if we're going to give up time to the cars behind. Obviously the 56 Racing team and that Corvette have been very, very fast all day. I think we'll have to give up quite a bit to those guys, so I expect those guys to make a charge late in the race.
I know that you might be on the back foot in terms of the fuel, but you got to feel pretty good for this far forward Mercedes right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think coming into the race, it's probably the first thing you want to be is just the best of your manufacturer, which we're doing at the minute. So yeah, it's looking good. Plenty can happen. There's a long way to go. Obviously with multi-class, you never know. It can change in a heartbeat. So yeah, just got to keep our heads down and keep doing what we're doing.
Well, I see Johan starting to hunt down Rexy right there in front of you, so I'll let you go. Good luck with the rest of the race, Peter.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys.
That was Peter Behrman, part of that driving duo with that Mercedes 198 car.
And so we'll see Behrman in slightly later to replace Hart to the end of the race. He'll be hunting down former teammate Michael Johnny, who will take over in the iRacing by Kawanda 118. Here come, well, race leaders. There comes Fiercely Forward first, and then on the CrowdStrike laps machines, but is continuing to be an impressive charge from Christian Hilgard in that number 11. Now, this was one of the things that coming into the season, Peter, we kind of were wondering. The last couple of seasons have been all about the Kawandas and the biggest teams in sim racing. Who would be able to take the fight to them? Grin and Go are one of those teams that we saw last year who have come back as part of our public qualifiers, but Fiercely Forward and made their name and are now running at the very front of the field, and on a very different strategy to what we're watching right now, as Xander Reed and Mitchell de Jong really feel the pressure in their purple and orange machines.
There is pressure, and there's pressure. Goodness me, Johan Royer is putting them under the bind right now, really laying on the heat, and quite a bit of contact there in little bits and pieces as they come through that technical section. But the GTPs have just raced so well here today. We heard in our Countdown to Green program, Lewis McGlade said that this place does race really, really well, and he's absolutely right. There's been some fantastic duels, particularly in GTP, and I think because everything is just going on so fast in these cars, and they're such a challenge to drive and get the very best out of, that it's so easy to just make tiny little errors here and there, whereas the GT3s you can get into more of a steady rhythm with them, but there is just none of that rhythm at all, and as you're working your way through traffic, that breaks up the rhythm too. So the GTPs, for me, they've been the stars of the show so far.
It's a proper knife edge, isn't it, that you're on when you're scything through traffic, but even just in a fight like this, any small mistake and very, very easy to put a foot wrong, and a very big incident can result from that as well. You can see the sun shining into the cockpit as they cycle back towards the start-finish line. It will actually shine through the grandstands as well if you're sat inside of the pagoda, either in the broadcast booth there or in one of the hospitality suites. It's a very unique setting to watch a race here at the Speedway. Patience from Johan Royer as the big green machine of the Maniti McLaren slides in front for the time being. Mitchell de Jong's allowed to hold on. This is the fight, let's not forget though, Joey, for 11th position. Neither of these drivers has come in for their second pit stop of the race either. This is the fight outside of the top 10, and they're fighting like this.
It's one of the strong points of competition, right? Of course, all the fastest cars and drivers are going to migrate towards the front, but what if everybody is that fast? It'll be proven that fights for 11th and 12th happen, fights for 4th and 5th happen. I mean, I look all the way down to the GT class, and 20th and 24th even has a fight going on. It's just a testament to how well these drivers and teams have prepared, that there's always going to be a fight no matter where you are on the racetrack.
And well, we've, for the most part, outside of the 4 retirees in the GTD class that we talked about earlier, Pablo Lazar has joined their misery, but we've still got 44 machines rumbling around the Speedway, so always great to be able to see that. Look at focus from Mitchell de Jong, who I'm not sure if this might be one of his final laps behind the wheel. If he could be handing his car over to teammate in the next stint of the race. That's the World Sim Racing Esports car that's had a bit of a spin as Gabriel Erdelli gets tangled up, Peter Smeliak for Impulse, and Chris Capello for the Vestasport by P1 Docs team mixed up. This outside of the top 20.
It's not been an easy day for WSR Esports Butt Kicker. They were involved in an incident early on. They picked up a lot of damage there, and it's kind of just gone from bad to worse. It's one of those races where you just got to get it home to the finish. And with the attrition we've seen though, and when you're in the GTD field, you've got 32 cars. If you just get it to the finish, let the others have the issues, let them stop, and then you'll gather the points up.
And I'm just wondering as well, was that just GTD cars tripping over one another? The replay machine never lies, and if a picture says 1,000 words, well, a video, there's 60 frames per second. You do the math. There's a lot of words being put into this one, Joey.
Yeah, I think we're just going to see this Lamborghini get in a little bit too deep right here, make contact with the Porsche. He spins himself, and then he's just stuck on the nose of that McLaren. So a little bit of a self-inflicted spin there from that number 123 Lamborghini.
And well, can you imagine what would have happened if this was after next week's iRacing build, Peter, when the debris and all of that stuff gets even more dynamic, and now you've got marbles, grass, dirt kicked up onto the track that everyone else has got to drive their way on through. I'm really excited to see what's going to change in the next week. The teams also have got a lot of learning to do before we race once again on January the 5th, I think it is, from Sebring.
It's going to be really interesting because coming into that festive period, I don't think there's going to be a great deal of turkey and mulled wine going on for a lot of these drivers, because it's going to be really, really busy with getting prepared, getting used to that new tyre model. I think that'll be the biggest change for the GTP drivers. But yes, when there's a little bit of detritus and a little bit of muck being brought onto the track, particularly if it's a circuit where you can cut corners, and Sebring you can do that at certain places and bring stuff onto the road. And yeah, they'll get used to it though, and they'll put the hours in for sure.
Sebring's one of those classic tracks as well with its bumps, let's not forget. So a setup approach there, very different to what you need at what is a pretty smooth surface at Indy for the most part. Here's the look on board with the Vestasport by P1 Docs machine that was sat behind. Bish Bash Bosh does well to go off to the left and then actually minimizes any potential contact there. Heads up driving.
That was a terrific job of accident avoidance. You got to remember, yeah, you want to stay on the racetrack, but it is better not to bang up your car, pick up a couple incident points, maybe lose 1 or 2 seconds in terms of that track position, but you live to race another lap.
And well, they're still inside of potentially the top 20. There's a long way to go. I did note, by the way, fiercely forward into pit lane and driver change. So Christian Hilgard's done an hour and 30 odd minutes. Marcos Nunez now, Peter, 65 minutes to try, and from what was a car that was leading the race, deliver as good a result as possible for a team watching on with bated breath.
And this would be huge for Fiercely Forward. They're a group, they've been around in sim racing for a while, but to get up to this level is a long journey, and they've done that, and they deserve their position in this championship. So yes, there will, I'm sure there will be big nerves in the team room right now.
And well, that's the great thing about endurance racing, is you've got those people behind the scenes, and we've talked about it. There's some preparation to do for those behind the scenes to get setups dialed in for our next rounds. January the 5th and January the 12th, back to back from the Sunshine State. We'll roll first to the Sebring International Raceway and then build up to the Rolex 24, to the iRacing Daytona 24 as well, with our final race of the season. I'm looking forward though to Sebring, A, because I'll be commentating from Sebring, B, I get to stay at the famed Sebring Hotel. We talked about it a number of times as well. iRacing's holiday sale, 50% off all new memberships. Give the gift of iRacing. Head on to iracing.com/holiday-sale to learn a little bit more. And Joey, I've got to ask you, what are your memories of Sebring? Because that's one track that I've never got the pleasure of visiting in person, but everyone says it's intimidating as a driver.
As a driver, yes, it is very intimidating, as we see the car number 107 here picking up a drive-through penalty with contact between them and the number 160. But to talk about Sebring as a driver, you have to attack every single corner. It's so bumpy. You have to be so aggressive everywhere that if you lift off just for one moment through one little sector, you lose a ton of time. And you'd mentioned the Daytona, the pre-grid, the track walk before the 24 and how awesome it is. Yes, it is. But if you've never been to Sebring during the 12-hour, let me tell you, that place puts on an entire party throughout the whole infield section.
But are there fireworks halfway through the race?
There might not be fireworks, but we get plenty of flybys over there, and trust me, if you go wandering through Green Park, you will see some interesting things.
So Daytona's got the Ferris wheel, it's got the fireworks, but it doesn't necessarily have the Sebring infield experience.
You know what Sebring does have is the fan experience, like you were saying, and the amount of vehicles, the golf carts that come out, the cut open school buses that are just party buses that everybody is rolling around on, the custom scaffolding. Yeah, it's an experience.
So that's where you'll find the three of us after the race, January the 5th. Fight for third in the GTPs. Did CBS competition slide in front of Race Clutch? Jaden Munoz almost slid his way off into the grass on Holman Boulevard, but he gathers things back up. Also, seeing the fight for fourth start to intensify. Johan Hart's done a great job of closing up to Rexy in the fight for second. Dino Lombardi's under pressure, though, from Lasse Urinen, who's started this race back in 7th. Best of the Ford Mustangs, let's not forget, and really starting to look hungry.
And the battle for the overall podium really fierce. After that little bit of a battle between the 89 BS Competition and the 5 Williams Chill Blast car, the BS Competition car has broken away and got past the Race Clutch Cadillac and is up into third position now. 3.5 seconds up the road is your number 20 BMW M Team Redline. So it's just sort of zigzagging back and forth all the time. And in GTD as well, if you so wanted to, you could pit now and get to the end of the race without one more stop. So you could pit any time between now and hard to say when the actual cutoff will be, but you could pit now and make it to the end of the race.
I think a cutoff's going to depend on whether you took a shorter service or not in the last into the last trip down pit lane. I got very concerned for a moment. Marcos Nunez in that fiercely forward Cadillac around the outside of turns 3 and 4 in that fight for fourth in GTD. Some of the prototypes, as we get into these closing stages, we talked about the give and take of traffic. They're only thinking about the take. They're not thinking about giving. They're only thinking about where they'll place their car. Race Control did warn them in the briefing not to go for gaps that are closing. I think the viewpoint of a driver starts to change in the last hour as to what is a closing gap.
100%. I think we're going to probably queue up a replay here on the bottom part of the screen, and this is some of that give and take. I think this looks like turn number 1, jumping over the curbs. You know, it's a pretty flat track here at Indianapolis, but those curbs can be pretty violent, especially if you attack them in the wrong way. You saw how much that prototype car really kind of upset itself by climbing all the way over that turn 1 curb.
And I've always thought that there are some curves at Indy which you can use, and there are some curves that you should just flat out not use. It's been quite interesting seeing that even some manufacturers, there's actually some slight differences there about how they want to approach the curves. Of course, take the GTD cars as an example here. Some of them do tend to get a little bit more upset over the curves, whereas we saw, I think it was the Mercedes in particular, absolutely launching themselves over the curves at the chicane. But that's an hour and 40 minutes complete. Less than an hour to go for this Thrustmaster 240. Arjuna Kankipati alongside of Peter Mackay, Joey Atterbury, live on IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network. And every which way you look, there are strategy storylines still to be worked on out. That, I think, was the first inclination that something's going to change. Grin and go in their Ferrari might just have blinked, and Dino Lombardi is down on pit lane.
So now it starts then. 103 grid and go. They're going to pit, and that will get them to the end of the motor race from there. Well, is there a little bit more strategy to be played in GTD? I wonder, but I'm intrigued to see how deep the GTPs can go in. And you know, we heard from the 18 Coanda crew talking about they reckon that some of the GTP crews can save a pit stop. That, to me, that sounds like a big ask, but let's see.
So I think we're going to see Simone Marcheno step into that grid and go car, by the way, for the first time today. Let's jump on board, though, once more, 58 minutes ago, and drink in the sights and sounds of the Ford Mustang rumbling around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This on board, brought to you by Thrustmaster. Well, we're ready to go for a blast to the end. A couple of drivers still getting ready to trundle down onto pit lane. And so we're about to find out what strategies will work. Alexander Spetz leads for Williams Esports Racing Prodigy. Chris Lullum in the BMW M Team red line entry is second with the Zebra, the number 89 BMW M Team BS Plus competition car. Third in the battle for the overall podium. It's a little bit more separated initially in your GTDs between at least the top two, Team Redline and AO Racing by Coanda. It's about 6 seconds covering the Ferrari and the Porsche. Johan Harth, though, for the first time in about 10 or 15 laps, has gotten within 1 second of the car in front of him. So a bit more draft assistance as they get ready to dive down to pit lane for the final time today. And Joey, you've been doing the math, trying to work out what the strategy is for the teams and the drivers, and you think you've cracked the code.
Well, it's a tough code. I kind of feel like just trying to type away at the computer. Here's the Corvette. This is that 56 Racing team with Gail Valero driving. Remember, they took a full fuel stop on the stint prior, so I'm not surprised to see them in here, and it'll probably be a shorter stop for this Corvette, but I'm pretty much looking at the Ferrari, the Porsche, and the Mercedes, our top three in GT. I think that they are pretty much on fumes right now, and our prototype leaders, maybe another 2 or 3 more laps before they have to come down pit road.
Yeah, they are counting up to 40 laps complete on this stint, so they are very much at the edge of their window. But I think that's why they've been saving, because they're going to do the same thing to the end of the race. Save some fuel, go another 40, 45 odd laps, and that should get them to the checkered flag of this Thrustmaster 240. This is the fight just on the edge of the top 10, with Mitchell de Jong just in front of Johan Royer in a pair of Porsche 963s. Of course, the purple and orange Coanda entry in front, piloted by Mitchell de Jong, who will hand over to his teammate Elvis Rankin to finish off this race. Their sister car in GTD on the hunt, though. Also looking a little bit more uncomfortably behind than I think they'd want, Peter, because at Mercedes, Johan Harth, they were saying they're going to be compromised at the end on strategy, but they're still looking in a very, very good spot for a decent finish, all things considered.
I think they will be, in the cold light of day, they'll be very happy with how this is going, because they were, well, even in practice and in the early stages of qualifying, looked like they were really behind the 8 ball on speed, but they've pulled it out in the race conditions, and they're a really well gelled unit. You look at Johan Harth and Peter Berman, they've both driven for that team for several years now. And that experience together and setting the car up, so important. They've won a lot of ACO Grand Slams with that car, with the AMG, so they know it well, they know how to set it up, and it's not a surprise to see what they've been able to deliver today.
Well, it's a busy time down on pit lane. You mentioned those VCO Grand Slam successes. How can they now translate that to the remainder of this IMSA Esports Global Championship? This, by the way, all unfolds as we just got word of a rather almighty smash down the main straightaway coming out of the final corner. Door Esports, Damon Woods in the Chevrolet Corvette that we've called out on a number of occasions, having a good race, great looking livery on the car as well. They got tangled up with GTP traffic. We'll figure out what happened in a few moments' time. This was all around the Coanda Esports car as well. So Joey, let's pull back time. Let's figure out what happened. The Corvette was sitting in 5th.
Yeah, so watch the first prototype go around, going to make a little bit of contact with the fender right there, and then the second prototype pretty much slams him into the outside wall, so he picked up the ringside chair and finished off the Corvette.
Well, that is very much straight out of the WWE playbook with a tag team sort of a move, wasn't it? Unfortunate, though. Again, sitting 5th on the road. A great day, now unstuck. They'll be pinning their hopes on the 121, the sister car. Door Esports have a surviving Ford Mustang in play. From the race lead, it's Sean Campbell. He's had a remarkable stint so far, an hour and 50 minutes or so. Time to hand over to his teammate to take it over, Jake Dennehan, to the end of the race. Max Muir is into pit lane in the number 60, and Jari Lehtinen in the race clutch number 15, all into pit lane. Now just waiting to see when Owen Carroll comes in, who does, as he did in the first stint, Peter, go 1 lap longer than the rest of the field.
And normally you would think that a 5.5 litre V8 would be more thirsty than normal. That's what we're told. It looks like actually that the Cadillacs are pretty good on fuel mileage. So a bit of consumer advice for you. If you'd like to save money on fuel, gas prices are a nightmare now. You need to get yourself a 5.5 litre General Motors V8.
The other 3 GTP did have a slight hit in their fuel capacity in the BOP adjustments. Cadillac, the only car left at 100% fuel capacity, but yeah, that is something to note. It's the only one that's been able to go long, although Porsche, Acura, Cadillac all in on the same lap this time by. It means now net race leaders once again, the fiercely forward number 11, but they still owe us a pit stop relative to the number 33 Williams Esports Racing Prodigy entry. The gap between them is about 10 seconds or so, and so Joey, correct me if I'm wrong, control of this race right now is in the hands of Ate Kalpinen behind the wheel of the 33.
That's by my math. That's what I see as well. I just don't see that the number 11 can stretch it all the way to the end as we see the Channel 199 car come down pit road here. I'll do the math over on my side, but it would require a lot of fuel save in order for them to get all the way to the end, and I don't think that they've got that track position to bleed.
That's the thing, right? They may be able to get to the end, but they may lose 40 seconds on the road in doing so, at which point may have been better to come down pit lane. NASCAR champion Parker White makes his first appearance in the series, by the way. Mercedes AMG Williams Esports team really didn't qualify well. Beckham Jasir not getting the most out of the car, but a sterling first in from him. Parker White's taken over, and now sitting up there in what is a very, very good position, albeit yet to come down pit lane for the final time today. Speaking of, red line, AO Racing by Coanda. It's a pit party for GTD.
And who's got it right? Who's done the sums right? I mean, so far, Redline have been absolutely sublime with their Ferrari number 171, and can they make it 2 from 2? I mean, isn't it just remarkable how much of a contrast there's been between the two Redline cars? Just one car just going absolutely perfectly, and the other an absolute disaster. And of course, last year's champion, Gianni Beccio, well, his car couldn't really be going any worse.
Yeah, exactly. The story of motorsport summed up there in many ways. Marla Racing Team, another one of those, by the way, that's slowly been picking their way forward. Another one yet to come down pit lane for the final time, though. We'll see where Felix Quirnbach's going to end up cycled out in the BMW M4 GT3 alongside Oskari Rine in a car powered by BS Competition. I did get word that the Williams Esports Racing Prodigy team may have had an issue on pit lane. I'm not quite sure the extent to which this is going to impact them, but we'll keep an eye on it. Let's see if they are actually in the position that we think they are, or if they're maybe a bit more on the back foot than we were thinking. I'm looking at these pit stop times, and I'm a bit surprised that they were only stationary for 36.9 seconds, whereas Chris Lullum, in comparison, 49.9 seconds.
I'm picking up what you're putting down right here, because yeah, it's about call it 13, 14 seconds difference between themselves and the Team Redline cars. You look at the other cars that are on the same strategy. I'm looking at the number 89, 49-second fill time. The number 23, a 50-second fill time. So yeah, to your point, Arjuna, I think that number 33 might have short-filled it, unfortunately.
And so that might mean they're back down on pit lane to the end. Was that the strategy, though? We'll, again, see if we can get word from the team behind the scenes. And that's something that, Peter, we often talk about, right? But that's where having more help in situations like this is beneficial, because you've got more brain power, right, that can be spared to go and think about what to do to adapt, while the rest of the team is focused on just driving and staying out of trouble.
Yeah, that's where the top professional teams, you know, like Redline, Coanda, Williams, etc., to name just a few of them, they're where they have a big advantage. They've got that backroom support, and that's really important when things maybe work out slightly differently than what you anticipated, and you've got to think of solutions on the fly. And this has been a race where there is many different ways to approach it strategy-wise, and in GTP, I'm looking at the pit stop times as well. They are kind of all over the place. Now, remember what Charlie Collins said, though. He said he thinks that there are GTP teams that are trying to do it on 2 stops, not 3. And I would throw in the 20 car, the red line car. They've done 2 basically 2 full pit stops. The 5 Williams car, the 23 Race Clutch Cadillac. So there, I think the cars we need to look at who are going to be fuel saving hard to try and avoid that final splash and go. Perhaps the 33 Williams car is accepting that it's going to be a 3-stop race but have shorter stops. And of course, Williams have got the luxury of having they've got 2 cars up there, so they can afford to split them.
You kind of picked up what I was thinking, is that it's so marginal that I wasn't sure if it was an issue or if this was intentional. Again, 45 minutes left to go. This is what makes endurance racing so great. I often talk about it like a Marvel multiverse. It all is winding down, and it comes to a head once we see the checkered flag. In GTD, though, I do think as it sits right now, Team Redline are in a very, very good position. Enzo Benito has got a considerable margin back to Michael Jarni in the AO Racing by Coanda machine, just waiting for a couple more GTD drivers to come down onto pit lane. And Joey, you've been keeping an eye on strategy as well. Do you think Redline is looking perfect on fuel?
I do. I just did the math over here, and they should basically be able to go 41, 42 laps on their fuel stint, and we've only got about 45 minutes left in this race. So yes, they're close, but I think that they're, at worst case scenario, half lap to the good. At best case scenario, maybe 1.5 laps to the good.
And ideally you'd end the race with 0 fuel.
Correct.
That's the ideal situation. You'd like to have a bit of margin though if you're being safe, just in case you splutter coming out of the final couple of corners, especially if you're in a close fight. That's the last thing you'd want, to lose a potential race victory or even a podium by thousandths because you spluttered coming to the line. 45 minutes to go though, and that sun well and truly below the horizon. And as mentioned, expectations are the darkness is going to consume the track. Headlights will pave the way, at which point a different sort of intensity will take over this Thrustmaster 240. Right on board with Maxime Briand, the rock and rolling Frenchman in the Acura, hunting down a race clutch. This on the edge of the top 10, Peter.
Yeah, Maxime Briand, he's just a superstar in this type of car. He loves prototypes. He's so strong in a LMP2 car, and that's chassis-wise, that's very close to what these GTP machines are based on. They're based on the spine of, for example, the Cadillac's based on a Dallara spine, the Acura's based on an Orica spine, the Porsche is a Multimatic spine, and so on. So but powertrain-wise, they're very different. That's where the difference comes in. But Maxime Briand, whatever prototype, Le Mans prototype you put him in, that is his comfort zone. That's what he loves.
And I often think when we see his webcam that he's listening to music, because I call him the rock and rolling Frenchman, because his head's just bobbing along like he's listening to, I don't know, Sandstorm, something along those lines. But it's just remarkable the level of movement behind the wheel. Often we see these drivers on their webcams, Joey, and it's like they're strapped into a real racing seat, right? And they can't actually move. Whereas Maxime, you can tell he's having fun, which I think is the most important thing at this level of sim racing.
Everybody's a little bit different. Some people just need to get comfortable. Some people thrive on that competitive atmosphere over there. And sometimes you'll even get drivers that are leaning into the corners. But it's all in that comfort factor, and everybody is a little bit different. Sometimes drivers like to have somebody talking to them on the radio, just kind of keep that heart rate down, keep casual conversation. But everybody's a little bit different when it comes to that.
Yeah, I was one of those chatty people. I had a teammate who was not very chatty, and so he would A, want me to stop talking when he was driving, B, he would get irritated when I was talking when I was driving, because he'd be like, why aren't you focusing? Which I don't blame him. I wasn't a very good driver at the end of the day. That's why I'm up here in the broadcast booth. 42 minutes to go. Xander Reed, the Coanda 18, back down to pit lane as they get ready for their final sprint to the end. So they know they've committed. Now they've just got to deliver on the strategy that they've been given. It's going to drop them outside of the top 10. Let's see how they can drive their way back up through the field. There it is. 18 trundling down pit lane. And you can see the speed down the pit straight. Peter, I feel like pit lane, the speed limit here, feels like you're crawling in comparison to those blasting past.
Oh, it must feel like it goes on forever as you crawl down that pit lane, that famous pit lane here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The sun's just starting to come down, and this is something you can't really do in the Indy 500 as the sun comes down. We can do that here though with our sports cars. 41 minutes to go as we come into this really the business end of what's been a thrilling event here for the Thrustmaster 240.
Current race leaders, Williams Esports in the Mercedes 105. Parker White's holding up strong at the very front. His teammate Beckham Jasir standing by with Joey Atterbury.
Yeah, Beckham, good to have you here in the commentary booth. It's got to be a little bit nerve-wracking watching your teammate all the way up front right now, huh?
We decided to go for a bit of a different strategy call. We went for another full stint instead of doing a short stint, but yeah, he's keeping up the pace, doing good, and should gain some time now with this short fuel in this last stop.
That kind of led me into my next question. I assume you guys are going to be short fueling out there. What is the main goal right now from here to the end?
Mainly thing is keep the car one piece. You know, points are very valuable right now. But once I'll be jumping back in the car and just full push to see, try to get some more spots.
Well, Beckham, I'll let you go. Good luck when you get back in the car out there. We'll be watching you.
Thank you, guys.
That was Beckham Jasir driving that number 105 along with Parker White, who we're riding on board with right now on the roof.
It's a pretty power-packed lineup at the end of the day. A lot of people will know Parker White, yes, more for his eNASCAR exploits, the 2024 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion, but I've got to say, we've seen him grow and blossom as a road racing driver in the last couple of years. He qualified for the 2024 Porsche Esports Super Cup by winning the qualifying series and beating some of the very best on the grid here today. And so you've got him, you've got Beckham Jasir as well, another driver who, hailing from Miami, plenty of karting experience, and slowly but surely being grown to his full potential by the team at Williams in the sim racing world as well. A very, very good position. The Williams Esports Chill Blast car, though, Jaden Munoz has been swapped out. Matt Farrow's taken over. Winners 2 weeks ago. A slide up to the inside. Matt Farrow clambers over the curb, gets a shot in the bumper as well for his good efforts there. They'll be wheel to wheel out through turns 2, 3, and 4, but it's finally 6th position to the way, the number 5.
Seems just so fierce there in GTP, battling over those positions, but are the number 20 BMW M Team Redline crew, are they in pole position, if you like, because they're the leading car that have taken 2 fuel fills. So if the right strategy is to try and skip that final pit stop, they're the best placed car with that amount of fuel on board. But if the 3-stopper is the right way forward, then of course that's the number 33 Williams car. This is going to go down to the wire.
Remember, as we head off into these final 40 minutes with 2 hours officially complete, still waiting for some of these teams to come down pit lane for the final time, and I think just 5 left at the front of the field. So the 105, yes, and there's some other stories, including the likes of Impulse and the McLaren, started down in 27th, and Petr Smeliak's been involved in fair share of argy-bargy as well, but sitting in 3rd, yes, they have to drop down the field by virtue of their pit stop yet to be served. Get a bit of an indication based on where the Vesta Sport by P1 Doc's car is going to fall. Chris Capello brings the 152 down to the lane as we re-pick up the GTPs.
And speaking of those GT cars, I think that the front runners are pretty much going to be forced to come down pit lane here in probably the next few laps, maybe next 2 to 3 laps, depending on when they pitted. I think Parker White may be able to stretch it the longest, while Drago Racing probably in here this lap or the next lap. The GTPs, though, fiercely forward up here. I think that they're about 10 minutes short on fuel. So I think our overall leader probably going to stretch it as far as they can, but I just don't see it making it to the end.
No, I think I'm with you. It's going to be where they drop. Still, it's been a good effort for them. They've shown they've got the speed, maybe just lacking a bit on that strategy side of things, which goes back to the strength in numbers, right? Fiercely forward, probably not having the resources of a Redline, of a Williams Esports, but again, showing us their speed, their potential, and the ability, without a shadow of a doubt, is there. We spent a fair share of the opening hour talking about how busy race control were being, and let's be real, there were plenty of penalties that came down. But one thing that I've just noticed, Peter, is we had a total of 72 incident reports during round 1. Now, some of that includes off tracks and the warnings that teams get when they're a bit aggressive there. But we've got 40 minutes or so left to go, and we've only had 24 incidents reported so far.
And a lot of those would have been in the early stages of the race. It definitely has calmed down quite a bit over the last, certainly over the last hour, I would say. Much calmer, or much less incidents to speak of. And that can be down to the field thinning out and everyone just getting a feeling of one another and how everyone operates out on track. Because when the teams are doing their private testing, they're obviously on their own. But only really when they get out into practice will you see what it's going to be like, and the intensity always turns up during the race too. So yeah, I think there was just a lot of figuring it out in that first 40 minutes or so, where it was just, it wasn't chaos, but it was certainly fractious at points.
It was an interesting start, to say the very least, and while the intensity has by no means dropped, the headlights have started to pick up in their intensity. Hours 1 and 2 in the books. Let's take a look at some of the highlights from the Thrustmaster 240, round 2 of this IMSA Esports Global Championship. Good start across both the GTPs and GTDs initially, before things started to get a bit more tetchy. Traffic overlap, and then our first bit of multi-class chaos saw the 177 Valkyrie car go around. Williams Esports GTP gets involved in some of it, and then the Apex Mercedes also a little bit aggressive as well. And I think that's kind of been the story. When do you want to be aggressive behind some of this traffic? Unfortunately for Pablo Lazar, after speeding on pit lane entry, things went from bad to worse. Too aggressive over the curbs, and he just saw a hop, skip and a jump straight off into the wall. East Holman Boulevard, not where his car ended up. Really fun fight between Grid and Go and Kawanda in the 963 Porsches. Ended up resulting in a bit of drama through some of the traffic. This was something, though, where all the GTDs just tripped over themselves. Chris Capello did a great job to avoid it. This was that incident, though, where 120's Door Esports banging off of each side of the wall down the pit straight, and unfortunately what was a great one comes unstuck. But the sun is setting. 34 minutes left in this Thrustmaster 240. And right now, as we take a look at the Michelin keys to the race, Joey, 3 things that we've talked about very much holding true.
Absolutely. I mean, through the highlight package, we saw survive the chicane. One of the cars just ejected off driver's left. Watch out for those track limits. I mean, how many cars did we see being pushed off out there to outside of turns 3 and 4? And then stay out of the pits. We've seen so many penalties handed out at the beginning half of this race. I haven't seen any of those drivers or cars be able to come back from that huge time loss. I think the only real comeback that I've seen here today is that Williams Esports Chill Blast car, but even then it's been a little bit lackluster once they've run into traffic.
I mean, without safety cars, right, you don't really get that chance to pack the field back up and to really be brought back into a fight. And therefore, it almost exemplifies the importance of strategy and picking the right one from the start of the race. GTD and GTP pit stops, by the way, as this is the Simufy number 14. Acura ARX 06 rumbling down the lane. I also saw a couple of other cars making their way through as well. Channel 199 Sim Racing in their BMW M4. I guess one thing that's quite interesting, though, Peter, is often we talk about change of conditions, right, with going from sunlight or daylight to the nightfall, and we talk about balance of the cars changing because of temperature changes as well. But because we're racing in the virtual winter, track temperature is about as cold as you can get. And so I'm not sure if the balance of the cars has really changed too much from the drop of the green to this point in the race.
Doesn't seem that way, no. I think the big variation is how the cars behave, each individual cars behave based on the fuel loads. Some seem to work better on the lower fuel load than others. We saw at the start of the race where the Acura on fuel load in the hands of CrowdStrike Racing was really, really good. And then through the rest of the stint, it started to fade back again. And that can also come down to how the tyre wears as well from car to car. So, yeah, I think in general, you're right, the conditions have been fairly consistent. Let's say, and yeah, it's one less thing for the teams to worry about.
They may not have that same luxury heading into the rest of the season. They'll find out the forecast for the next couple of races 1 week before the race, so not much time to really get up to speed. But in the case of Simona Miramarceno, gridandgo.com, a bit more effort put into the work for this particular series to build that setup, but he's jumped in, replaced in that 103's teammate Dino Lombardi, and has very much been able to keep himself in striking distance of what could potentially be some other things. Getting word, though, as we check back in with Fiercely Forward, incident. They've dropped down to second on the road as well, and 31 minutes to go, straight down to pit lane. It's Williams Esports Racing Prodigy now leading the Thrustmaster 240.
And folks, I went back and took a look at this one already. I'm sure we'll get a replay queued up soon enough. This happened in the chicane. It involved multiple cars. It is a funnel effect going in there. If you are not single file going into that chicane, it is going to be bad news bears coming out the other end.
Wow, that's big drama, because now we don't even get to speculate if there is a chance for the strategy to work out in their favor. So again, it's going to all sequence out into the chicane. Peter, it looks all good through 1, 2, 3, and then behind not one, but 2 different GTD machines. Where do you choose to go?
Not there. Don't go there, folks. Yeah, that was a strange one. Just a little blip in concentration, and so easy for that to happen. There was really no way through there. You had to go back out of it, and that was a 0% move. It's never coming off.
0% move is maybe the best way to describe it, right? There was 2 different lines for the GT3 cars that were going to converge at any time, and there was not enough speed to pass before you got to the corner. And so, well, unfortunately, for Fiercely Forward, going to hopefully be able to leave without too much lasting damage on the car. But they've been sitting stationary for around 45-50 seconds or so. No signs of rolling back out onto track. And let's not forget, we're still not sure. Do Williams Esports Racing Prodigy have the fuel to get to the end of the race? If they don't, that means that, Joey, it's BMW M Team Redline, pole sitters at the AMD 240. Before 10 minutes into the start of the season, they got involved in traffic through no fault of their own. They fought back to the best of their ability, clawed their way into the top 10 at Road Atlanta, and could now be on for victory.
I think a big talking point just a couple weeks ago at Atlanta was don't put yourself in a hole in round number 1, right? And that's exactly kind of what fell into the lap of the Team Redline number 20 car. But race number 2 is a new day. Race number 3 and race number 4 is going to be a new day as well. And you just have to make the most of what's presented on the table in front of you right now. They're certainly taking advantage of today.
Update in GTD, by the way, the 105 Williams Esports Mercedes did come into pit lane. They've re-emerged on track in 10th position. And remember, we chatted with Beckham Jasir. He's back in that car. Let's see what sort of a charge he can mount. More drama. Charlie Collins goes around, and it's at that penultimate corner where we've seen so many things set up. But once more, 30 minutes to go, more drama for us to look through.
Oh dear, that's a shame. It's interesting to see what they were going to do. As Team Redline now, are they in the driving seat now in their number 20 BMW Team M machine in that M hybrid V8? Let's take a look then, see what happened to Charlie Collins off camera there. And oh, now does he get a help from one of the Redline cars? Through he goes. Just a tangle. How many times have we seen that today?
It's been a couple of cases where race control has been talking about cars turning in a bit too early. Curious to see what they think about that one. We're also getting to the point where if you have an incident and it's a big one, it takes race control a little bit of time to work through. Could be a post-race penalty.
I also think that the GT cars in the really, really slow speed sections of this racetrack, they make a great amount of mechanical grip, just as much as what these prototype cars. So the prototypes thinking they're fastest, but they're actually the same speed through some of these corners. I think that's why we see them kind of tripping over each other.
And I guess as well, something else, Joey, to that point is that in a lot of these corners, the GTDs can actually be more aggressive in the braking zone. They enter with slower speeds. They've got aids, right? Anti-lock brakes as opposed to the GTPs where you're actually trying to recover some energy. So you're trying to both slow down as quickly as possible, but counterintuitively, the longer you make the braking zone, the more energy you recover. So there's, contrasting priorities for the drivers in the prototypes to think about. So I truly believe that the GTP and GTD traffic management, especially once you get to the real world and you throw LMP2 into the mix as well, and GTD Pro, it is one of the most difficult things in motorsports that you can do. That's Williams Esports, I'm pretty sure, off to pit lane though, so we'll get a look at that maybe in a little bit of time. Right on board with Vestasport through that penultimate corner.
So this is going to give us a better idea of what went on from the back there. But so Williams Esports Racing Prodigy, they're on an alternate strategy, and having to take that pit stop is going to really, really hurt them and drop them down this very competitive GTP field. There's still so many strong cars left in the race, but in GTD, It's all going on. Well, this is a Ferrari sandwich. You've got the burger bun as the two Mustangs, and then a fine Milanese in the middle. That's my kind of burger. I do like a Milanese.
Oh, you're making me hungry. It's just gone 1:30 for me. I still haven't eaten anything today outside of a couple of snacks. So I'm going to go get a Ferrari burger after this one. You've also made Lewis McClay very happy for correctly identifying the sandwich, its bun, and its meat. A lot of people would call this a Ford sandwich. No. You don't call your sandwiches based on the bread. It's not a bread sandwich. Anyway, rant over, 25 minutes left to go. This is the fight for 6th position. And I think at this point as well, Joey, this is a great fight because those in front have really separated themselves out a little bit too much. So I don't think there's much to fight for in the top 10, with the exception of these three down to turn number 1.
Yeah, this is the battle for what is 6th, 7th, and 8th. And oh my goodness, that was a huge defensive move from Marcheno there in that black and green Ferrari. He's right in the middle of the road, and he takes it a little bit deeper on the brakes than that Ford Mustang giving chase right there. So things kind of stay put through turn number 1. Although, whenever you go defensive down the straightaway like that, I think it already sets your intentions that you're pretty much going to have to go through that driver. He is not going to work with you. You better get up there and make a move.
And body language is so important at this level of racing to communicate to your intentions to those around you. And so, you know, often in sim racing we talk about how great it is that you can dial up the radio and tell everyone else in the server what you're going to do and how you're thinking. It's not something that you can do in a series like this. In fact, if you got on the radio and told someone what you thought about their move in traffic, it might get you removed from the server potentially. And so being able to show your intention with the car, very, very important skill set. That's a bit of a lunge from the CrowdStrike number 3 as Tanguy Billon's trying to now just cycle his way on through. He's the last car on the lead lap in the GTP class with the leaders directly behind. And that's a Lamborghini off at the Holman Boulevard chicane. And it's a World Sim Racing car that's lost its rear diffuser.
It has been a day to forget for that squad. For WSR Esports Butt Kicker. Just everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. They'll be looking forward to moving on to Sebring, a circuit that of course they know so well and have had success in that Lamborghini before. I remember right back, was it 2020 when the Lamborghini Huracan came out, and they went straight in with it. They had a lot of success early on with that machine.
And it's a Lamborghini Huracan as well that a lot of people claim is the same as an Audi R8, but no, it's not. There's some differences between it. How many times have you heard that one, Peter?
Less than you'd think, actually. Of course, the engine is very, very similar.
Yes.
Yes, so that will be fine. There'll be a lot of components on it which are shared, but it is a different design.
Yes. No,
by regulation, it's a different design.
They are not the same car, yes, don't worry. But I've heard that one a decent amount, so I always bring it up. Okay, so now that we've had Williams Esports Racing Prodigy down to pit lane, BMW M Team Redline in control of this race, and Team Redline leading in the GTDs as well. This is what happened to the World Sim Racing Lamborghini. So through the final corner, looks okay for the time being. Remember, the incident itself happened down through that chicane onto Holman Boulevard. And so it's a battle with the Mag Performance Corvette who gets blocked to the outside. And Joey, I'm just going to say, that did seem like a bit of a reactionary block down the pit straight.
It probably kind of fed into what's about to happen here in a couple corners. So look at this prototype. He's being a little bit patient. He's going to sneak through on the inside and clear the two GT cars, but then they are going to argue side by side. The Lambo jumps up over the curbs, makes contact with the Corvette, and what you don't see is that number 123 Lamborghini sitting in the tires afterwards.
Probably a good thing that we don't have to see the sight of a almost destroyed Lamborghini Huracan. That's a project car for somebody to try and YouTube series about of some kind. Actually, that's a fun idea. Could you win the Rolex 24 with a car that was wrecked and rebuilt entirely by the power of YouTube?
No.
No? You're just going to say flat out no?
No. You're not giving race teams enough credit nowadays and how much work and time goes into prepping a GT car, prototype car for Daytona 24. I think it would make a great YouTube series. And kind of to your point, I used to order Lamborghini race car parts from the local Volkswagen dealer.
You make it sound so casual as well.
It is.
Unlike a gearbox for my GTI. Just flexing the big guns while you can. That is a fair point. And, you know, that makes me think about the Indy 500 a couple of years ago where Colton Herta smashed his race car in the final practice on Friday. And then I remember on Saturday that his backup car legitimately was like 5 seconds, it felt like, off the pace, because like Joey mentions, there's so much effort put into these particular cars. And Peter, something we touched on last round in particular with the Evo packages that a lot of these manufacturers bring, it's about how can they attempt to reduce running costs for the cars. Some efforts are more successful than others. How can you make the car easier to repair? And how can you make the car easier to drive for the amateur racer?
Well, I think the latter two are definitely part of it, but I think the running cost aspect has gone well out the window. It's, that little battle here again, switching positions back and forth between the virtual coach Ferrari and the Mustang here. Really tight, good battling there. But yeah, I think the modern era of GT3 cars, costs are going out the window. As soon as they were eligible for the GT class at Le Mans, the cap was out the bag. You know, you're over €1 million for a top running GT3 car now, and that's why you're seeing it at the level below. You're seeing a lot of Audi still racing, a lot of Mercedes still racing, because they're still of the previous generation, if you like, which are a lot more cost effective. So yeah, with every Evo package and every update, these cars get more and more expensive. Not an issue on the sim though.
Not an issue on the sim at all, and yeah, that's definitely something that we're sometimes take for granted. On board with Max Muir, who sometimes we talk about the different setups that these drivers have. He's in virtual reality and on the hunt to try and break Jake Dennehan in the race clutch number 23. Remember, Sean Campbell did almost 2 full hours in the Cadillac directly up the road. Augustin Canapino and Max Muir have been a bit more equal in terms of their share of drive time. 18.5 minutes left to go. Joey, I think we're pretty clear. Both these teams should be good on fuel. They came in on the very same lap. And so now it's a battle between Porsche and Cadillac. Who's got the best fuel mileage? Who's got the best speed? Here comes the hybrid spooled into gear for Solpec Precision Racing.
Max Muir moves to the inside, and you see that race clutch black car pretty much can't do anything about it. He lifts off the gas and moves that Solpec Precision car up into 4th place. It was neat to see that virtual reality out of the driver right there. There's always the differences, right? The VR, the triple screens, the ultra wides, and I do think that virtual reality, it gives that immersion factor. It's just like putting the helmet on your head.
Yes, we don't often see it at the top level of road racing, because I think a lot of people sometimes say for these longer stints as well, it can be a bit claustrophobic, and there's concerns about getting sweaty. But some of the off-road stuff that we have in iRacing, for example, take Channel 199 Sim Racing. They do a lot of pro truck racing as well as rallycross. A lot of those drivers are in VR, not the drive-through penalty for Vesta Sport, but the lead battle, GTP, Peter, 2 seconds, splits BMW M Team Redline and BMW M Team BS competition. There went the 89 through the camera shot for a moment. Traffic is giving and taking right now, and it's Phil Denez that's on the hunt, a driver that not traditionally is known for being in prototypes. He's been racing in real-world GT3 cars over the course of 2024. He's looking really, really good right now.
And they are on an identical strategy in terms of how much fuel has gone into the car. Now, in terms of laps when they pitted, the same. So this is an absolute straight fight between that number 20 BMW M Team Redline car and the number 89 of Phil Dennis for the Zebras, for Team BS competition, a team that have been around for quite some time now, always affiliated with the BMW brand. And, well, they'll be desperate to try and claim the scalp of a huge name like Team Redline, a team that they've gone toe-to-toe with for so many years. But if you can finish ahead of a team like Redline, you know you've worked very hard indeed.
Exactly. Phil, by the way, this year has raced both a BMW M4 and a Lamborghini Huracan in both the Italian GT Championship and in the GT World Challenge Europe. He was over in Jeddah to close out the season there as well. So it's been great to see him get more opportunities in the real world, almost it feels like, because of the success that he's had with BS competition in the virtual world. One of those true hybrid racers, and very much now pushing the case. Here's the ride on board out of Carmel, California. Half a second a lap on average. Chris Lullum is quick as well. Joey, he spent the better part of the year racing in the Hagerty Radical UK Cup and showing his speed there, but this is a totally different ballgame.
15 minutes remaining and the lead fight is on. It's gone from 2.5 seconds in the last couple laps, now down to 1.5 seconds. And to your point, I think that Phil is actually doing a great job through the traffic, just picking the gaps nicely and smart, right? If you make the wrong decision going through traffic, all of a sudden that 1.5 second gap can balloon up to over 3 seconds. You want to keep it shrinking down, and Chris Lullum has done a terrific job to manage it from out front. It's just going to be, where do you run into these GT cars? Who's going to get the benefit of the traffic?
We've got 15 minutes to go. We'll keep an eye on battles through the field. This is BS Turner, Reina Talvar in front of GT Esports and Yoni Catio with Mac Performance in their Chevrolet Corvette just in front of them. This is the fight for 18th position. So 1.4, the margin between the top two. And I'm kind of now sitting here and going, if you're Williams Esports Chill Blast, you're probably thinking about that moment in traffic, right? Where Jaden Munoz may be a little bit aggressive, maybe cost a couple of seconds, and maybe cost them a chance of being up front and fighting for back-to-back wins. And Peter, this is how championships go, right? You don't want to knock the driver for being aggressive and for taking a chance, right? That's what race car drivers have to do. But could it have been the difference between 300 points for third and 350 points for winning?
I think we're nowhere near making that call yet with the fuel. But also, I think I would, contrary to that, I would say that look how good a job they did to recover from that. They were right back on that podium pace. They recovered so quickly, and at this level to run somebody down that fast was remarkable. And yes, it was a mistake from Jaden Munoz, of course it was, but to recover from it and basically get back on strategy and back on run with everybody else as they came into the pit stop, I think that drop in time has been elsewhere, but I think it's far from done. There is no guarantee that they're going to get home, or if they need to come in for that tiny, tiny splash at the end.
Silly Lully has responded. Last lap, about half a tenth quicker than Phil Dinez. CrowdStrike Acura is going to pull to the side and let this battle for the lead take full focus. Onto the brakes once more. And for the first time in about an hour and a bit, the gap between your GTP leaders dipped below a second. And you can see every time they're going through traffic right now, Joey, we talked about the give and the take. They're having to make that decision. Do I need to go for it, or can I afford to sit back?
And usually the closer you get towards a checkered flag, it is more take than it is give. But we've still got 12.5 minutes left. If you come across a GT car that you maybe weren't nice to a little bit earlier and you try to take a little bit extra, they might not be willing to give 6 inches. They might not even be willing to give at all out there on the racetrack. So decision making still on top of the charts right now for what you need to manage.
And so a couple more GTD cars in front of them. It hasn't completely dropped off in terms of the daylight that's very much hung around in the sky right now, and that might actually mean it gets even more intense. That's not going to help Chris Lullum, though. Slightly compromised onto Holman Boulevard, and now under half a second. A couple of car lengths between your race leaders, and two drivers in almost identical machines at the end of the day, right, Peter? These are two BMW M hybrids with the same balance of performance. The only difference, the setup that these teams have dialed in.
Yeah, when they get the delivery from the virtual factory, they get exactly the same equipment, and you're right, it's how you set it up, it's how you dial it in, and that can be driver specific as well as what gets the best performance out. As now the traffic goes back in the favour of Chris Lullum in that BMW Team M Redline car, and Phil Dennis has to give a little bit of time back. When they crossed the line, it was 3/4 of a second was the gap. It's definitely more than that now, as Dennis has to pay it back, and it's back and forth all the way. But again, I'm going to say it again like a broken record here. I still don't know if the fuel's right or not. This is going to be really, really tight.
It might even come down to one of those situations where they will slow down to avoid doing an extra lap so that they don't have to worry about the fuel. I don't know how close we are to that threshold, that margin. It is something just to keep at the forefront of the mind. We'll also just point out, remember we chatted with Peter Berryman earlier, Joey, and he was saying that he wasn't sure in this last part of the race if they would give up time to their competitors on strategy. I will say, Berryman still sat in third, Apex are looking good for a podium, and the 56 Racing Team Corvette has not been able to mount a charge. If anything, the only driver really charging right now, Beckham Jasir in the 105 for Williams Esports.
Yeah, he's the car, this blue Mercedes right now that is just filling the mirror of that black and green Ferrari. Watch this number 23 prototype try to get around to the inside there. That's going to kind of separate this battle out just a little bit. And kind of to Peter's point about the fuel, I just wanted to go back and double check everything over here on my side, Arjuna. I do think that our front three and prototype are plenty good on fuel. Got about 10 minutes remaining, and I see about 12 and a half minutes of fuel is what they're carrying currently.
At least we don't have to start thinking about virtual energy budgets as well, because that would make the situation even more confusing. I will say big props to the team at IMSA that's actually, over the last 2 years, been getting more of that information out in the real world to the viewers. It's been great to follow along with the live timing that's got all that energy budget provided for the real full metal action. Back down, this back straightaway one more time. The red line leading GTD car is going to be their next bit of traffic. A car that we haven't talked too much about, Peter, which is probably a good thing. When you're leading, you're controlling, and you're dominating proceedings, you just want things to stay out of trouble.
And that's been the story of their championship so far for the 171 Team Redline. They've just been like an express train in that Ferrari 296 GT3. A really top job from them. And again, that's one of the benefits of being a big team. Of not only is it having the engineering support, but it's also just having more cars in the race. Things can go wrong out of your control, and well, Redline, they've had one car that's had a disaster and one that's going really, really well. Mag Performance, a drive-through penalty late in the race. That's a pity for them.
Well, race control still active, and again, we do have the possibility that penalties could be moved to post-race, so any results could very much be provisional. On board, riding from the roof of this BMW M Hybrid, the very first LMDH car available on iRacing. It's been around now for so long that in many ways I feel like these teams have just developed so much knowledge around this car. Of course, BMW have got two teams representing them, both Team Redline and BS Competition, flying the flags as official BMW factory teams. Only one of them can be the best of the BMWs, and that is a real bragging point, Joey. When you go into a race weekend, be it virtual or reality, the few things that you can actually control: be faster than your teammate, be faster than everyone else in your car, and hope that that's enough.
You hit it spot on, all right? Let's say if you're out there in a Mercedes and just the car is not capable at this specific track, you want to be in the front of that Mercedes pack. That way, whoever's deciding those BOP decisions, they want to come and talk to you and say, hey, well, where is the car lacking, or where do you need maybe a little bit more? And that's exactly the point of BOP, as we get a good shot here. This is a good battle. This is what is fourth place in GTD. Right now, it's that 56 Racing Team, that white Corvette, currently leading over this Drago Racing car of Nicholas Mateo here, giving chase. And I gotta say, good comeback from that white Corvette, that 56 Team Racing car, because remember, they took a full fuel stint on that second stop right there, and were really kind of buried in the middle of the pack, and they fought their way back up into fourth.
Yeah, you know, I was a bit surprised when they came in so early as well after taking that full service, but you know, I think they've had something specific in mind on the strategy. They wanted to try and maybe flesh out the drive time. It's team manager Antoine Bastard that's behind the wheel of this 156. They are struggling to close up, though, to Peter Berryman. That's what I was calling out slightly earlier, and so the battle between the Lamborghini and the Corvette, well and truly on. Not for a podium, though. 6.5 seconds off of the top three steps. Focus back up front though, because 6 minutes left to go. 0.6 of a second between the front two, and flip a coin. That's how you can predict your winner right now. Could be close on fuel. Both cars looking very quick right now, and it could come down to the strategy. You always want to make sure you've got the right driver in at the right point of the race. Redline and BS Competition, they put their faith behind Chris Lullum and Phil Dinez, Peter.
I think we're going to have a true GTP showdown, and the thing is, regardless of where they are on fuel, they're both in the same boat. They've both played exactly the same strategy. They've been in the pits for almost identical amounts of time, so they really are playing an equal game here, as Dinez has to just get out the gas a little bit there as they get past a bit of GTD traffic. But two cars the same out of the box, just have to be set up differently by the crews, and well, it's going to go down to the wire. Just a car length or two between them, and that's been the story of the day, hasn't it, in GTP? It's just been constant from the green flag to what are we now, 5 minutes to go. There's been different characters at the front, lots of different characters at the front, but it's always been tight.
And it's almost as though the sunlight has played a perfect part of this story as well, because right as we get to these final 5 minutes, right as these two get super close, we're finally starting to see the headlights a bit more important in lighting the path in front, top and bottom. Two battles within a couple of car lengths, and there's more fights around the field as well. Fight for 6th in GTD, fight for 5th in GTP as well. Joey, this is the top level of sim racing. We've got 49 of the best teams in the world, and they put on a show so far.
As the sand in the hourglass starts to run out, all of the battles definitely start to emerge. What was relatively quiet, call it about 15 minutes ago to your point, now we've got a handful of battles all the way around this racetrack. I do think that Chris Lullum up in front has done a great job to kind of manage the pace out front, but now is when it really comes time to test that pace. Is how much can you turn it up? The lights pretty much have been turned out. The visual cues are a little bit different, but you got to keep the pace up.
And still not expecting the balance of the car to change, but your comfort around the track and your rhythm might have changed quite a lot. A look at the inside from Nicholas Matteo, but the Drago racing car can't breathe its way on forward and is sucked behind once again. Have also noticed that Channel 199 Sim Racing Casey Kerwin has brought the 95 back up into 5th position. What a recovery drive from them. They have earned every plaudit that will go their way at the conclusion of this race. But we're now heading into these final stages of the race. Every move matters at this point. And Nicholas Matteo, knock, 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 he's finally got his way forward to 4th position.
Great move there in that Drago Lamborghini. I make it 3 laps to go, including this one for the GTPs. That would take them to a 42-lap stint, which would be absolutely perfect in terms of fuel. They've done 42 lap stints all day, so it's actually split up very nice and neat and tidy there for fans of that kind of thing. So it's now just a straight fight. 2.5 laps or so to go now between Lullum and Dinez, two drivers that have got a bit of real world experience under their belt. You mentioned, Arjuna, what Phil Dinez has been up to, but of course Chris Lullum's had a run out in an Aston Martin Vantage GT3 car too. Oh my, that was tight.
Oh yeah, you're right. Lullum's been testing a whole bunch of GT3 cars, and maybe that's actually going to give him a bit of help in understanding how they work through this traffic. Remember, he spent the year competing in a Radical. He understands downforce and how to make it work. He's checked up though, behind 1, behind 2, to the inside of both of them. Dinez will try and follow onto Holman Boulevard. We believe 1 lap to go at the line. Dinez takes a wild line, committed to the throttle. He'll stick within a couple of car lengths, but his momentum on the side of Silly Lully for the time being.
Dinez has to thank that Mustang of that 131 car that they passed in that chicane there to give him some extra room, because that's really the only reason why they survived going through that chicane too wide, was cooperation from the GT car. And now he finds himself pretty much underneath the rear wing of Chris Lullum, coming around to another big break zone.
And we were also passing that fight with Williams, by the way. There's a fight brewing for 6th, 7th, and 8th in GTDs as well. But wrap back around to the line. White flag will be in hand to close out this battle on the bricks. The Thrustmaster 240, round 2 in the IMSA Esports Global Championship. Silly Lolly's got the lead, but half a second. Phil Denez still on the hunt, down to turn number 1, Peter.
This is it then, last lap. Can Denez find anything? Lulham's been really strong under pressure in every little phase of traffic. He's not panicked, he's been really clinical, but every little bunch of traffic is an opportunity for Denez to get in there and try and pick the pocket and win this race. What a thrilling end this has been to this second round of the IMSA Esports Global Championship.
And the World Sim Racing Lamborghini in front could play its part. There's a couple more GTDs as well. Denez has done this before, thrown a lunge on Redline in BMW competition. But this is for round 2 of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. And through the S's, Silly Lolly picked the right direction, and the gap is stretched out to 1 second. What a race, what a way to close out 2024 and action for the IMSA paddock. It's going to be redemption for BMW M Team Redline. Pole sitters 2 weeks ago, but taken out through no fault of their own. They've bounced back by doing exactly what they do, driving their way to the front and conquering victory lane in the Thrustmaster 240 at the racing capital of the world. You can see what it means to Silly Lolly. A reaction that almost defies belief, and double delight for Team Redline. It will take half a lap or so, but it will be Enzo Benito that cycles back around to the line to make it 2 wins for 2 for Team Redline's 171. Joey, Team Redline are rocking and rolling.
Yeah, basically picking up the torch from where they left off at Road Atlanta. Unfortunately, their teammates in the 170 had more issues, so it really has fallen all square on the shoulders of these two drivers. But guess what? They've picked up the slack. They've made it mistake-free at Atlanta. They've made it mistake-free at Indianapolis, and now looking at a couple more corners to pick up win number 2 of the season.
It's something that we've only seen technically once before. Repeat wins, back-to-back wins for a team. Apex did it to open up the 2022 IMSA Esports Global Championship, but it's taken a while since then. Back-to-back for Team Redline's 171, for Florian Labigra, for Enzo Benito. It's delights here at Gasoline Alley as they'll ascend up the escalator and elevator to that podium ceremony and enjoy the celebrations with the BMW M Team Redline counterparts. What a race, what a way to close out the year. And now the clock can't roll forward soon enough to January the 5th when we go racing for the Grid Finder 240, the 3rd round of the IMSA Esports Global Championship. We'll take a look at plenty of action in our post-race coverage, and I can't wait to try and figure out what our Thrustmaster move of the races, because we saw plenty of fighting, Peter, at the end of the day. But I think the one that probably takes the cake, race clutch in that number 23. Plenty of sunshine, and Sean Campbell saw his opportunity to take 2 for 1.
And they did a great job all day, didn't they? That race clutch crew made the most of their strategy, mixed it with some of the real biggest names in sim racing. You've got the BS competition car and Williams, they're having their own little battle, and Sean Campbell's just plotting his move, thinking while they're distracted and in a strike, moves to the outside line there onto the racing line, while the two BMWs still bickering over it. He's still trying to plan his opportunity, and now as the traffic gets thicker, thinking, is there an opportunity for me? And as we're about to find out, yes, there absolutely was. Again, the two BMWs still trying to knock lumps out of each other, one going out the other way, the BS competition car having to cut the track, and the race clutch Cadillac opens up the V8 and through he goes. Definitely the Thrustmaster move of the race. Fantastic.
There's some proper racecraft on display, and don't forget he had to then fend off the challenge up the inside from Jaden Munoz trying to retake the place. What a sequence there, not just one corner, but indeed almost half a lap between 3 different GTPs through the traffic. That's our Thrustmaster move of the race, and this winning moment, brought to you by Thrustmaster, sees Team Redline burning it. You're not allowed to burn it out on the bricks, just be careful. We just about got out of there. but it's a moment that they've become quite familiar with. Yet another moment of success for them in 2024. Looking forward to grabbing a look at what will be, let's not forget, unofficial provisional race results as race control finishes up any post-race review that might still warrant any penalties. Let's talk about, though, our Thrustmaster post-race report and our race results presented by Thrustmaster. Under the night lights here, it's Team Redline that shine brightest. 6/10 or so the margin. BMW M Team BS Plus competition and Phil Dines pushed all the way, but not enough to conquer Silly Lolly at the end of the day. Williams Esports Chill Blast making an all BMW M hybrid podium, really maximizing performance in that particular car, before Solpec Precision Racing backing up an impressive performance from them 2 weeks ago. The best of the Porsches in fourth. Channel 199, Apex, Race Clutch, and then Kawanda and Williams Esports Racing Prodigy, the rest of the top 10. Before you get to those, one lap down. CrowdStrike Racing, Simify Esports, Kawanda, Rafa Esports, and then the Fiercely Forward team before you get down to our 2 DNFs in class, gridandgo.com, and the second of the CrowdStrike entries. Slightly misleading given that technically only 2 cars are scored on the lead lap, but Team Redline very much dominant, 11 seconds clear of Rexy, and for Florian Labigra, for Enzo Benito, 2 for 2 to open up the season. What does the rest of this championship have in store for them? Rexy put it on pole, settles for second. Michael Johnny and Tristan Iglesias will be happy with that. And the best of the Mercedes AMG Team Apex Racing team. They grabbed the final spot on the podium, and then 5 manufacturers inside of the front 5. Drago's Lamborghini 4th, 56 Racing team in the Chevrolet is in 5th before the second Mercedes, Mercedes AMG Williams Esports 105. Team PGZ second a couple of weeks ago, 7th to back up that performance with Grid and Go, Sontec Racing and the Marla Racing crews, the rest of the top 10 in class. Small margins through some of these drivers. Grid and Go second entry 11th, Drago Racing, Impulse, and then the BS Plus Turner cars all involved in their fair share of fighting. Doors surviving entry scored in 15th with Sontec, G2, Maniti, Channel 199, and Team PGZ, the top 20. Getting down to those in a bit more trouble. A couple of penalties going the way of Vetasport. They're 21st. World Sim Racing, no rear end for their car. They still finished down in 22nd. With then the second Apex machine, the second Mag Performance entry, 07 Racing, and Solpec. All your final finishes. DNFs for the likes of Visceral, Door, Team Redline, World Sim Racing, Valkyrie, and that first Mag Performance entry. A look top to bottom at your Thrustmaster race results. Let's head down though to the GTP winners, standing by with Peter Mackay.
Chris, I'm going to start with you. First of all, congratulations on winning the Thrustmaster 240. That was nerve-wracking there. We weren't quite sure if you were there on fuel, but just talk us through that final stint.
Yeah. I mean, we knew it was going to come down to the line on the fuel. It was going to be extremely close. Plus or minus, what was it in the end? 8 seconds for an extra lap, and then we would have been done. So I knew it was going to be very close at the end, but I didn't expect it to be that close on the final lap. I didn't want it to be that close, but obviously with the blue flag rules we have in place here, the guys around me have the right to race me the lap down. But you know that's the way it is, and I'm glad we came out on top, but it was very stressful.
It certainly looks stressful. It's exciting for us, stressful for you. Talk us on that last lap. You come up against that WSR Esports Lamborghini and GTD. You're right there, and it could have gone either way. You know, one of you could have got stuck behind. Just talk us through those few corners when you're trying to get by that Lamborghini. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a bit of a sort of goose chase. Like I went one way, he went that way to try and get out of my way. And we ended up sort of following each other left and right. And at one point I was like, I have to just go for it and commit. Otherwise I'm going to lose the race right here on the last lap in the last 2 sectors. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to judge, but I'm happy I came out on top anyway.
It certainly worked out. No, it was fantastic. And Diego, for you, you'd already done your job by that time. You've handed the car over in a good way, but you've got to sit there with no control and watch that all going on. What was going through your mind on those last few laps?
Yeah, the last lap was quite nerve-wracking, but I have full trust in Silly Luli, and he got the job done, so that's the important bit, and I'm happy with the win.
Okay, slightly different question. You'll have to forgive my ignorance here. Where does the nickname Silly Lully come from?
It's just a name we gave him inside the team. So yeah, that's it.
So it's a secret, is what you're saying?
It's between us, let's put it that way.
Okay. I'll leave it at that then. Guys, congratulations on winning the Thrustmaster 240. A brilliant bounce back from the disappointment at Road Atlanta. All the best in a few weeks' time in Sebring.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
We also have our GT winners standing by here is Florian Labigra as well as Enzo Benito. I'm going to start with Florian since you started this car out today. Flip-flopped the roles on that starting driver, but it seemed A-okay, a pretty easy stint for you.
Yeah, I just had to manage the traffic, really. We knew that, Enzo did an amazing job in quali. The track position is really important on this track, and so as soon as I had the opportunity to, I took the lead, and then it was just managing the traffic and tires and fuel, and then I gave the car to Enzo, and he did the job.
It seemed like that Porsche was able to kind of scoot away on that initial start. Did you feel like maybe the Ferrari was a bit better pace suited in terms of the full fuel stint, or just kind of your guys' pace shined?
I don't know. I think the Porsche had a really great pace. In the first stint, I was saving a bit the fuel. We had a pretty, let's say, difficult target to hit, so I was focused more on that than just following him, and then he got bad luck with the traffic, and then I just passed him and finished the stint.
Simple as that. And Enzo, coming over to you, it seemed like once you hopped in the car, all you had to do was kind of manage that gap to whatever car was in second place.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a cruise till the end. Yeah, Florian did an amazing first two stints, and even though BOP-wise we weren't the favorite in this round, we still managed to win. So it was a great race. We move on, and we'll see.
And speaking of moving on, you guys have won 2 in a row to start the season. Does that mean you're just like on top of the playground right now? Somebody's got to come and dethrone you?
Well, all teammates are just as fast as us. Really, they just got 2 bad races. They are so unlucky, but they can definitely match us. So they are probably going to be up there in the next race, but I'm afraid they are a bit out of the championship in terms of points, but they will be fighting for the lead. But yeah, we will see. I don't know who's behind us in the championship right now, but we will manage it, I'm sure.
It's a terrific start to the season. 2 wins in 2 races. Great job today, you guys.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
for the broadcast.
That was the team Redline number 171 Ferrari.
And well, one more chat before we wrap up our Thrustmaster post-race report. We'll chat to drivers of Rexy, the AO Racing by Coanda crew, Tristan Iglesias, Michael Gianni. Tristan, I'll start with you. Another great lap in qualifying. I've always said you're one of the most potent drivers in qualifying when you're behind the wheel of the Porsche. How did you feel about that lap? How did you feel about that opening stint where you got a good start, but then slowly over that first stint, the Ferraris, they started to catch up and eventually passed you?
Yeah, hello. Very proud about that qualifying lap. It felt very, very solid. The first lap wasn't that great, but then managed to improve at the second one, and really happy with it. And then the start of the race, we were able to keep up a really good pace and got a bit unlucky with some prototypes there in the first waves of traffic, especially in the last corner. There were a couple of times where I had to lift a lot because we were like 3 wide with 2 prototypes, and that's when Florian managed to overtake there, and and after that it was really tough to keep up with them, and especially another shout out to Kyle Valero and Garage 56 team, because they were flying on that Chevy, especially on the first stint. Like, we couldn't really keep up.
Always interesting when a driver says, I couldn't keep up with someone else. But Michael, it's been a busy year for you, been driving basically everything under the sun, I think at this point on iRacing. Talk to me about what it's like to be behind the wheel of Rexy? Because with that comes, I'm sure, a lot of pride, a lot of expectation, a lot of pressure, and obviously last time out things didn't go all according to the script at the very end of the race. But I think this time you guys showed exactly why you've been tapped to pilot this famed machine.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like you said, it's really a huge opportunity. It's really something it does come with a lot of pressure, I will say. Going at the end of last round, obviously we were in a position where we could have probably secured a podium. And to make a silly mistake like I did, it's not just letting Kawada down, but at the same time, it's letting down AO Racing. So it was something that was heavy on my mind for sure. And that's why this week I've put in a lot more, I think, to try to put myself in the better mindset, not only because there is more pressure, but also to kind of step up to another level of GT racing. I mean, I've done it for years, but I've never really been at the peak of it. So this season's definitely a nice step in the direction for that. And it's, what kind of better debut could you really ask for rather than driving Rexy? So.
Love it. Thanks for joining us, guys. Can't wait to see you in 2025, the final 2 rounds of this championship.
Bye.
Thanks.
And well, speaking of, we head to the Sunshine State. January the 5th, we'll be live. Green flag just after 2 p.m. Eastern. Of course, our countdown to green presented by Traction kicks off about 15 minutes before. But Peter, this is one of the most famous tracks in the world. Respect the bumps. I think that's all we need to say.
It doesn't really get a great deal better than Sebring. It's such a cool place, dripping in history, much like Indianapolis is, but in a totally different way. And sports car racing and endurance racing is at its very core since its inception in 1952. I'm a big fan of this place. The drivers love it, and it gives great racing too. Can't wait.
And Joey, before we wrap things up, some final thoughts from you as well, because we're now 2 races done with this championship. We'll get a couple of weeks off. We've got the iRacing build next week to look forward to, some new toys to play around with. But the competition kicks off once again in 2025, and those 2 races will see us crown our champion.
Basically start a new notebook out there. All the teams are starting from scratch zero. Let's see who can create the fastest car, show up on the bumps with it, be able to ride over it into the sunset at Sebring.
And well, we'll ride off into the sunset for 2024. A great year of IMSA competition, both in the real world and here in the virtual world as well. The IMSA Esports Global Championship returns to the Brickyard, and what a race we've just had. The Thrustmaster 240 does not disappoint. It's Team Redline that leave on top, and remind everybody they may just be the ones to beat. We'll be back next year for more action live on IMSA TV on the iRacing Esports Network for our great team behind the scenes. Joey Atterbury, Peter Mackay, alongside myself, Arjuna Kankipati. Thanks for your company. Happy holidays. We'll see you next year.